Mr. Bonds, are we on the record?
Yes, we're on the record.
All right. Good evening, everybody. It's 7:36 p.m. Monday, May 16th, 2022. This meeting of the South Orange Report Board of Education is being live streamed as well as recorded for storage and viewing on our district website. The public can participate during the hearings of individuals and delegates by signing up for audio public speaks via WebEx through a form available on our website. Adequate written notice of this meeting of the South Orange Report Board of Education has been sent to both townships and village clerks, the Star Ledger, the News Record, tapintosoma.net, and the Village Green. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Burnside, please note for the record that board members Bergen and Telesford notified that they will be unable to attend this evening. And with that, can you please call the roll?
Thayer Joshua.
Here.
Board member Alyssa Malaspina.
Here.
Student representative Noah Morose.
Here.
Board member Aaron Siders.
Here.
Board member Arun Vadlamani.
Here.
Board member Caitlin Whitletter.
Here.
Board member Courtney Wingfield.
Here.
Board member Johanna Wright.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to hold this meeting virtually due to the severe thunderstorm watch in our area. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Board Member Siders. All in favor? All right, that appears to be unanimous. Mr. Burnside. Also like to make a motion now to approve the minutes for the executive and general session of the April 18th meeting. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Board Member Siders. All in favor? All right, that appears to be unanimous, Mr. Burnside. We'll now turn it over to we'll now turn it over to Student Representative Noah Morose for the board recognitions for the month of May.
All right, so per usual, we're going to start with the student recognitions. The first one is for the SOMSD Music Department. Congratulations to the SOMSD Music Department for once again earning a Best Music Community designation from the National Association of Music Merchants for 2022. SOMSD is among 738 school districts that are among the best communities in the nation for music education. The award program recognizes outstanding efforts by administrators, parents, students, and community leaders who have made music education a part of a well-rounded education. Designations are made to districts and schools that demonstrate an exceptionally high commitment and access to music education. Founded in 2006, the NAMM Foundation advances active participation in music making across a lifespan of supporting scientific research, philanthropic giving, and public service programs. Congratulations to our entire district music department staff, students, and parent community for helping us to achieve this prestigious recognition. So the next one is for CHS students Cole J. Strupp and Jaden Park. Congratulations to Cole Strupp and Jaden Park, who are both National Merit Scholarship finalists and were both awarded corporate scholarships. Jaden Park has been selected as a winner of the National Merit Pfizer Incorporated Scholarship, sponsored by Pfizer Incorporated. Cole Strupp was selected as a winner of the National Merit Gannett Foundation Scholarship, sponsored by Gannett Foundation Incorporated. So the next one goes to Lipin Meng, Chinese teacher and advisor to the team, and Jenny Lezzy, Chinese teacher at Columbia High School, and the following CHS students: Silas Silverman Stoloff, Irene Chen, Sabrina Menian, Nigel Hugh, Sophia Tierney, Charlotte McCourt, Lola Christie, and Abigail Freeman. On April 30th, 2022, Columbia High School team won the 14th New Jersey Chinese Cultural Project Contest at Seton Hall University. Ms. Liping Meng was the advisor of the CHS team. The team's final presenters were Silas Silverman Stoloff, Irene Chen, Sabrina Manian, Nigel Hugh, and Sophia Tierney. The other team members included Charlotte McCourt, Lola Christie, and Abigail Friedman. Miss Jenny Leslie and other students of the Chinese program helped to make props for the final presentation. This cultural contest was a research-based project which took more than 5 months and had semi-final and final rounds. The research topic this year was how do TV shows reflect the Chinese and American cultures? Students did interviews, conducted surveys, analyzed the data, and prepared PowerPoint slides for the semifinal. For the final, the students presented their research findings and illustrated their analysis with skits. The students did an excellent job in both presentation of the research and performance of the skits. They won high praises and big applause from the judges and audience. The next one goes to Tim Van den North. CHS coding students Tim Van den North created a GPA calculator for the CHS website. Students and parents can use it to check out what their final grade will project to be for a full year class. The calculator can be found at www.somc.k12.nj.us/Columbia/school-info/calculator. The next one goes to our CHS production of Newsies. Congratulations to CHS's production of Newsies, who received 12 award nominations and 1 honorable mention from Paper Mills Playhouse 2022 Rising Star Awards presented by Investors Foundation. The following awards are listed here of the 12. The first one is Outstanding Overall Production of a Musical. The second is Outstanding Lead Performer in a Female Identified Role, Grace Trenoff as Catherine Plummer. The third is Outstanding Supporting Performer in a Female Identified Role by Rocky Anisette as Maida Larkin. The next one is Outstanding Supporting Performer in a Male Identified Role, Alex Iosio as Davey. Outstanding Performer in a Featured Role to Katie Traska as Race. Outstanding Performance by Featured Ensemble Group, the Bowery Beauties. Outstanding Performance by a Chorus. Outstanding Achievement by a Teacher or Outside Director to Trisha Ben Bethany and Bethany Pettigrew. The ninth one is to Outstanding Achievement in Choreography and Staging to Tricia Ben and Bethany Pettigrew. The 10th one is Outstanding Scenic Achievement to Louis J. Madrano. The 11th is to Outstanding Lighting Achievement by Tara Mary Abadante. The 12th is Outstanding Hair and Makeup to Derek Alfano. And the one honorable mention was Outstanding Costuming Achievement to Barbara Canis. So the next one goes to Burton Alexander Jr. and Noah Morris Jr. at Columbia High School. Noah Morris and Burton Alexander recently participated in Harvard Project, the International Socioeconomics Laboratory's annual Socioeconomic Symposium. They worked in a research group with students from around the world. Noah and Burton presented their poster to judges from the University of Michigan, Tulane University, the University of Paris, and more. The two earned first place out of 12 other groups. Their poster highlighted discrepancies in New York City parks, and their paper will be submitted to Elsevier Journal, Regional Science and Urban Economics. The next one goes to district students, Talia Mazuhuchi to 6th grade at MMS, Bonnie Donachie, 11th grade at CHS, and Chloe Miles, 12th grade at CHS. Inspired Minds Young Artist Exhibition is a visual arts program designed to strengthen the impact of arts and education through the local school districts. This annual program gives a comprehensive professional experience to Essex County High School students from submission, selection, exhibition, and possible sale of their artwork. Each year, thousands of submissions are juried by a panel of distinguished artists, photographers, museum curators, and arts advocates. The result is an exciting and electric body of work from the perspective of young emerging artists. Talia Mazuchi, a 6th grader from MMS, was given an invitation to participate alongside the high school artists. And in a blind adjunction, all her pieces were accepted, so she'll be included within the exhibition. Bonnie Donachie, an 11th grader at CHS, an AP Studio Art student of CHS art teacher, Mr. Kirk Menard, will have 2 of her artworks exhibited, Trapped and Elephant. Chloe Miles, a 12th grader at CHS, an Art 2 student of CHS art teacher, Mr. B. Curtis Grayson, will have 2 of her artworks exhibited, Playa del Hibiscus and 3 dashed lines in quotes. Very ominous. The next one goes to Seth Pirius. It is with great pride and honor that I share with the SOMC community that Seth Pirius, a senior member of the Columbia High School Band, has received the Governor's Award in Music for the 2021-2022 school year. His selection for this prestigious award was announced at the 2022 New Jersey All-State Symphonic Band and Wind Ensemble concert this past February, and he'll be formally recognized at an award ceremony on Thursday, May 26, 2022, at the War Memorial in Trenton. The following is a quote from CHS Director of Bands, Peter F. Bauer. Seth is one of the most talented, dedicated, selfless musical students I've ever had the pleasure of teaching. He's a skilled bassoonist and has been selected to numerous area, intermediate region, high school region, all-state, and all-Eastern ensembles during his high school career. He's a cornerstone member of the Columbia High School Honors Wind Ensemble and served as assistant drum major for the Cougar Marching Band this year. His contributions to the Columbia High School Band program are immeasurable, and his presence in the rehearsal hall and on the performance stage are simply irreplaceable. Seth Puris is the finest reflection of the students in our school district, and I am honored to have known him as such an intelligent, talented, humble, and dedicated young man. Please join me in honoring and congratulating Seth for receiving this most prestigious honor, and thank you for your support of the Columbia High School Band program. The next goes to South Orange Middle School. Psalms unveils its first free menstrual products dispenser. South Orange Middle School had held a ribbon cutting ceremony in early May for the first ever free menstrual supplies dispenser at the school. A bin of menstrual supplies was also placed in the school's gender-neutral restroom. South Orange Middle School Student Body President Scarlett Freeland and Vice President Alex Cahill initiated the menstrual supplies provisioning project with the support of the SOM Student Council faculty advisors Shawana Andrews and Danya Abrumi, as SOM social worker Allison Steiner. At their request, the SOMS Home and School Association provided the funding via HSA social worker liaison Melissa Litwin. The SOMA-based menstrual supplies advocacy group, Girls Helping Girls, served as a community partner. Freeland and Cahill narrated a video presentation letting students know about the new dispenser and bin. All SOMS homeroom classes watched the video. The project organizers selected company AuntFlow for installation at SOMS, primarily because these products are already in use at Columbia High School, and also because the group came to understand the importance of providing organic products. All right, so now on to the staff recognition. The first one is for Teacher Appreciation Week. May 2nd to 6th was Teacher Appreciation Week, and once again, we want to say thank you to all the extraordinary educators in our district who work tirelessly and families on a daily basis to keep things moving forward. We appreciate you and all of your hard work. The next one is for National School Nurse Day. Wednesday, May 11th was National School Nurse Day, as was established to foster a better understanding of the role of school nurses in the educational setting. School Nurse Day is celebrated on the Wednesday within National Nurses Week, and that is from May 6th to May 12th each year. We want to take the time to acknowledge the wonderful school nurses who take care of our students daily, who work tirelessly during the pandemic upon our return to in-person learning to ensure that students and staff are safe. We thank our district nurses, number 1, Julianne Porter, South Mountain Annex and lead school nurse. Second, Therese Kriegler at CHS, Gretchen Shook, CHS, Kenneth Turpin, SOMS, Joan Harrigan, Clinton, Tanisha Anderson, Jefferson, Jean Galliard Johnson at Marshall, Steffi Golden, Montrose, Teresa Oifi at Seth Boyden, Sharon Willis at South Mountain, Angela Thompson at Tuscan, and LaWanda White. The next one goes to Cindy Malotra from the Department of Fine and Performing Arts. Cindy Malotra, graphic art teacher at CHS, will have a photo included in the Beauty of Madness exhibit held at the Praxis and Photo Art Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota, from May 21st to June 4th. This exhibit explores the link to mental health, be it conflict or humor, fiction or fact, or any other literal or ephemeral lens-based investigation. The last one goes to Dara Granau, MMS Principal. Congratulations to MMS Principal Donna Granau, who recently presented at the 2022 End of Year Principals Conference hosted by the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project on Thursday, May 12th. The conference gathers administrators from across the state together to reflect on the year, learn from colleagues, and TCRWP staff developers, and hear about offerings for the upcoming school year. Principal Granau facilitated discussion on teachers are in different places on the journey towards embracing culturally responsive practices. How can we understand where they are and help them take the next steps in this important work? And that is your staff and student recognitions. There's a lot of them. Glad we're doing such great stuff.
Thank you, Student Representative Morose. I'll now turn it over to Dr. Taylor to give a brief introduction to our first speaker. Or I should say guest speaker. I think we only have one.
Thank you to our board president, and great job, Noah. So fantastic to hear all those great things that are happening in our school district. For those who watch these meetings pretty often, you've seen me and our team give updates around our district goals. And part of those updates talks about the district goal process and a representative from the New Jersey School Board Association. And we are very fortunate to have our rep here, Ms. Charlene Peterson, who will be reviewing the CSA evaluation process with our board. Welcome, Charlene.
Great, thank you so much. It is my pleasure. And it was wonderful to hear about the recognitions of the students and the staff. And I would like to add to that, that one of your board members was recently recognized at last week's Essex County School Board Association meeting. Aaron Siders was recognized for having earned new board member certification. So, New Jersey School Boards is pleased to, we try to encourage board members to take training as early as possible in their board, member career. So this certification is only eligible for members that had completed just up to 2 years of service. So at the meeting last week, Erin was recognized for having accomplished that. So just wanted to, thank her for that and hope she'll continue to, work on earning the next levels of certification. So as you said, I'm going to take the board through the superintendent's evaluation process. The board does a great job in getting trained in this process every year, especially when you have new board members that have not done this process before. The state requires that new board members be trained on this process within the first 6 months of taking office. It's part of the new board member orientation, but it's also a perfect way to have training with your board as a whole. Mr. Bonds, am I sharing or are you sharing my presentation?
Whatever's more comfortable for you.
If you could share it, that would be great.
Okay, give me 1 second.
So I know that the first slide on there that I'll ask about is, talks about whether any of the board members are conflicted from being able to participate in this process. And that would be if you had a relative that works in the district. And I know at some point the board has had that, but I didn't know if the board was in that situation now or not.
No, Ms. Peterson, we're not.
Okay, so then that means that every member is able to fully participate in this process. Okay, if you could go ahead and advance, please. And that's what I just talked about in that one. So we can go ahead and advance to the next one. So as we talk about, our role as a board member, and for those of you that do go to New Jersey School Boards training a lot, that you will always hear us say that from a board's perspective, it's not our job to run the schools, but it's our job to make sure they're well run, recognizing that it is the superintendent's responsibility to run the schools. So we, in our oversight role, exercise that through the evaluation process. So this is how then, that the board ensures then that the district is being well run by holding the superintendent accountable. And it was, mentioned earlier, and I'll talk about in just a minute, those district goals. So that then, is how the board helps to determine that it's oversight role. Okay, if you could advance, please. Thank you. So, one of the things we don't always realize is that there are legal guidelines to evaluating the superintendent. So this is, what's required of the board, that you have to evaluate the superintendent at least once a year, that the evaluation shall be in writing. The board and superintendent will meet to discuss the findings. And here's those goals and objectives that the evaluation needs to be based on, plus other responsibilities of the superintendent. And we have a deadline that we have to complete the process by, and that is July 1st. And when I say, complete the process, I mean everything, like not just the written part of the evaluation, but also that final sit-down meeting of the board and the superintendent. The last 2 years, the state has given boards extensions because of COVID. So there is no extension this year. So all of the planning that the board should do around this process should be, with the understanding that it needs to have it completed by July 1st. We're given some more information about what should be contained in the evaluation, that it should contain areas of strength, areas needing improvement, recommendations for professional growth, and indicators of student progress. It should be prepared by a majority of the board. And then when the board sits down to have that final summary conference with the superintendent to review the evaluation, that again, that should include a majority of the total board membership. Okay, you can advance, please. So, at one point I've been asked in the past, okay, we have this legal deadline of July 1st, but what happens if we don't meet it? So a few years ago, the state, when it updated some of the QSAC, the monitoring requirements, it went ahead and added this completion of the evaluation by July 1st as part of QSAC, and assigned 6 points to it. So your administration can tell you that 6 points is a lot of points to give away, right? If we don't have to. And then there are also points associated with the board having a policy and the new board members receiving their training. So, one of the things that we find is that the very last page of the evaluation is kind of a sign-off sheet that the board president and the superintendent both sign and date, acknowledging that the evaluation conference took place. So that then is what is the evidence that QSAC will be looking for and looking at that signed date, to ensure that the board is in compliance. Okay, advance, please. So, as much mentioned the legal requirements and the fact that, and New Jersey School Boards has a tool that you can use. We are sometimes asked, does a board have to use your tool? And the answer is that what you have to do is be in compliance with statute and code, but our tool is a way that allows a board to do that. So most districts do use our evaluation tool. And, I guess importantly, the tool was developed in collaboration with the Superintendents Association. And I was part of a committee a few years ago that included like 3 people from New Jersey School Boards and 3 people from the Superintendents Association. And then together we researched documents from other states and looked at the national leadership standards and put together a tool that we felt best represented the work that superintendents in New Jersey do. Okay, can advance, please. So here is a sample of a calendar, and just kind of more wanted to make the point of, the importance of boards completing this process by July 1st, that it should be, take an opportunity to kind of figure that out or calendar that work, and, suggest to boards that as much as we already have a lot of meetings that we need to attend, to see if we can plan out enough to be able to do the steps that need to be done for this process without adding any additional meetings to do that. So ideally, from the board's perspective, would have you consider whenever your last meeting in June is, and then plan to have that be your sit-down meeting with the superintendent, and then continue to work backwards on the calendar. So then, okay, then what's the next step that we have to have done before then? And then look at that. And so like continue to plan backwards to see then when, the board and the superintendent need to complete their portions of the evaluation so that you can meet the July 1st deadline and ideally not have to add any additional meetings to your schedule to complete all of the steps in the evaluation process. That's not always possible, but that's why if you can, calendaring that work is helpful. Okay, if you could advance, please. So wanted to, make the point when we talk about the superintendent's evaluation that we think about it as a process, and not just something we do once a year, not just one thing, that has to be done by July 1, but something that we actually have started last July 1. As we look at the superintendent's evaluation year, it goes from July 1 to June 30th. And it starts with that process of setting those district goals. What are those things that we're going to hold the superintendent accountable to accomplishing? And, it's a little bit of a disadvantage for new board members because the way, our cycle works now, new board members are sworn in January. So you've already missed 6 months of the superintendent's, performance, and also have not had the opportunity to take part in the goal setting that you're holding the superintendent accountable for. So, so we recognize that and try and do, and that's why the evidence that the superintendent provides is so important, so that you as, so that all board members, can evaluate the superintendent in an informed way. So as we, and we'll go through each one of the steps of the process. Again, just wanted to make the point here that it is a process. Okay, if you could advance, please. So here again, it's talking about that those district goals. So, typically the board and the superintendent will meet in the summer to talk about, it's basically, identifying like usually most districts have anywhere from 3 to 5 goals, but saying like, what are those things that we think are so important, that we're going to hold the superintendent accountable for accomplishing by putting them in his evaluation. If we think about all of the things that a superintendent has to do and the fact that everything falls under his purview, in order for the board to fairly evaluate the superintendent, in order for the superintendent to understand where the priorities lie and the things that the board is going to hold him accountable for, this would be, these district goals. I mean, we can't have him going in too many different directions. So we need to, like I said, identify those 3 to 5 things that we think are so important. So the board said as part of this process in identifying the what, and then the superintendent would develop action plans that would lay out how he's going to accomplish the what that the board was, part of. And we recognize that there are more and more goals that, may not take more than 1 year to accomplish. So the board would look at those action plans then and say, for this particular year, did the superintendent do everything he said he was going to do toward the accomplishment of this multi-year goal? Okay, if you'll advance, please. So this is what the evaluation tool looks like. So the tool starts with the superintendent being the first one to log in, and the superintendent would input those district goals, and then the superintendent would provide a self-assessment of the goals, whether he thought the goal was achieved, whether satisfactory progress was made, or whether little or no progress was made. And in this case, like I said, because there may be multi-year goals, sometimes satisfactory progress made is the best that we can do that year because it is a multi-year goal. And then the superintendent has the opportunity then to provide comments or evidence for the board to see to help support the rating that he gave for this goal. Then when the superintendent is done inputting his part of the evaluation and the superintendent hits submit, then there is a 48-hour window built in for him to go back in. And, if you say like, oh, I wish I would have said that or forgot to put that in there, that opportunity is in there. And then once that 48-hour window is up, then New Jersey School Board automatically sends an email to all of the board members that, basically says, okay, board members, your superintendent completed his part. Now you have, the opportunity to log in and complete your part. And you'll be given a link to do that. Then as a board member, each one of you will log in individually, and then you will see the rating and the information that the superintendent provided for each one of the district goals. And then you'll be asked to provide a rating in terms of what you think the accomplishment was of that goal. And then you are also asked to provide comments. Now, I will sometimes see that board members will give comments here to the superintendent, but you actually are directing your comments to your fellow board members. This compiled document is actually a working document for the board to help the board in its work of, each one of you having a voice, but then, being able to have a conversation about the majority opinion. So in this case, for those board members that have done this process in the past, can tell you really how important and how meaningful it is to your fellow board members to see your comments and to see why you gave the rating and to help understand what's important to you through this evaluation process. So I can't emphasize enough the importance of providing comments for the benefit of your fellow board members. Okay, if you'll advance, please. So once all of the board members are done, then New Jersey School Boards compiles the document into one anonymous document. So this is a sample of that compiled anonymous document from, like I say, the part one of looking at the goals. So in this case, in this example, that the superintendent in the goal said that in his self-assessment that satisfactory progress was made. When the board members logged in to do their evaluation, 7 board members agreed. 1 person thought little or no progress was made, and 1 person thought the goal was achieved. And then you'll see that the members down below where it says member comments, when you see the asterisk there, that's how you will know that a different board member is speaking. Like I said, it is an anonymous document, but it is important to be able to see the comments and thoughts of all of your fellow board members. Okay. Then the second part of this, I talked about all the components that are legally required in the superintendent's evaluation. So while we could get some of that out of the goals, it's also important to evaluate the superintendent then on the qualities of being an effective leader. So there are national leadership standards that are used to evaluate not only superintendents, but also assistant superintendents and other positions. So we took those national leadership standards and extracted out of there what would be appropriate for a board to evaluate a superintendent on, so that we could look at identifying those areas of strength and further identifying where more focus and growth is needed. So there are, go ahead, you can advance, please. So there are 6 standards in this evaluation tool that the board evaluates the superintendent on, again, based on those national leadership standards. Before we redid the tool, the standards were kind of in the old tool, more along functional lines of like finance and personnel. But it was recognized that the job of the superintendent is a lot more complex than that, involves, many more areas. So it was felt as we're looking at kind of like a big picture of mission, vision, and core values, and, looking at equity and care and family engagement. And, you can just see all the different areas here that, feels that it better aligns with the work that a superintendent does. So these are the 6 standards that the board evaluates the superintendent on. Okay, if you could advance, please. So here's a sample then of what one of those standards would look like as we go through the components of it. So this is that first standard of mission, vision, and core values. And one of the things that we found in the past as well, is if we look at ratings like exemplary and proficient, that in the past, 2 board members may have the same thought about the superintendent's performance. But to me, I called that exemplary and you called that proficient. So we wanted to help board members be better aligned in the evaluation. So when we redid this tool, provided a definition or each standard of what each rating means specific to that standard, so that the board would have that information, that the superintendent is able to provide live links. And I should say that, it's important for the board to receive evidence from the superintendent. The tool allows the superintendent to do it right here within the tool, but it's not required, and your superintendent may have other ways of providing you evidence. I guess more wanted to stress the importance of receiving evidence from the superintendent. And again, recognizing that it is possible to do it right here within the tool, so that as you are evaluating the superintendent, you can click on links to view evidence. I talked before about, new board members, and so wanted to make you aware of the last category on here of ratings as not observed. So we want every board member to be able to participate as much as they feel comfortable, but not have to, evaluate something if you truly have not seen it. So want you to, know that that's not a negative, it's not a positive, it is just strictly, I didn't see it. So wanted to make sure I pointed that out. And then as we look at each standard, each of the 6 standards, we're ultimately trying to get to an overall rating of the standard, but recognizing the standard is a little bit kind of a broad statement, wanted to make sure that the board member understood kind of the components that go into that standard. So under each standard, it has indicators. And so we chose to have the board members kind of put X's or fill in, kind of their thoughts under each indicator, mainly to be sure that you are being thoughtful in this evaluation and the work that you're doing, and that you are reading all of the indicators that go into the standard, so that when you give the overall rating of the standard, that it has been thoughtfully considered. So the system, I've been asked, the system does not fill in an overall rating for the standard. So if I gave every indicator, say exemplary, the system will not, mark your overall rating for that standard as exemplary. It will leave it up to you to do that. Because one of the things we found too is that for these indicators, they can be weighted differently for different districts. Something that's really important to your district may not be as important to another district. So we want to make sure that each district has the opportunity to weight this in a way that's meaningful for your district. And then here again, as a board, you can provide comments to your fellow board members for each of the 6 standards. Okay. Hands, please. So here then is a copy of that compiled document then, and what it might look like for a standard. So you can kind of see for this sample board, it looks like they're kind of a little all over the place, right, in terms of their perception of how the superintendent did. But as we look down the bottom and see kind of what the overall rating of in this example that you can see for the most part, the majority opinion would be that the superintendent's performance in this standard would be proficient. And so again, you would also see that summary of all of the comments. Okay. So we had talked about, we just saw then that compiled document that has everyone's opinions. It's important to hear from everyone what your thoughts were about the superintendent's evaluation. But now it's the board's work, similar to all of the other decisions that the board makes, to evaluate the superintendent based on the majority opinion. So you now have this working document, this compiled working document that has everyone's opinions. So that is a great tool then for the board to use then to be able to extract from that what the majority opinion is. And then that majority opinion document is the superintendent's actual evaluation. So the state calls that the annual performance report. So would advance, please, and we'll talk about that annual performance report a little bit more. So I talked about, I mentioned the importance of this being a majority opinion document. So this will require the full board to get together and have a conversation. So the full board then, so when New Jersey School Boards compiles everyone's individual opinions into that compiled document, it makes it accessible to the board president then to be able to download and then be able to share it with the other board members. And then typically the board president may be the one then who is authoring that majority document. It could be someone else. It could be someone that's assigned to that task. It could be the personnel chair, but recognize that it is someone's responsibility then to author that majority document, but they can only do it from the input of the full board. So there's typically one of 2 ways that the board does this. either the full board can either sit together, look at the compiled document with kind of a blank slate of that annual performance report, and then give direction to the person, the board president, or whoever is writing it, what they, feel should be contained in it. Or the board president who is writing the annual performance report can also come to that meeting with a draft of an annual performance report, and the full board can review the compiled document. They can review the draft and tweak the draft. Either way, either way works, because what's important is that the full board has had the opportunity to provide some input into what the majority opinion is going to be in that annual performance report. So, whenever a majority of the board meets to discuss someone's performance, the superintendent would need to receive a rights notification that the board, is having this discussion. And then that annual performance report then is what the board would discuss at that annual summary conference with the superintendent. Okay, if you would advance, please. So, in addition to New Jersey School Boards providing you that evaluation tool to get to that majority document or that compiled document, we also have a template that you can use to fill in for that annual performance report then that meets those legal requirements. So in this case, the board would be asked to come to an agreement on what the board feels was the majority opinion for each one of the goals, and then also provide the superintendent some supporting remarks as to why the board majority, that best supports why the board majority gave the superintendent the rating that they did. So the board would have that discussion for all of the district goals. Okay, then if you would advance, please. And then the same would also be true then for each one of the standards. So the board would review each one of the 6 standards, have a conversation, again, using the compiled document that would help give it a lot of, guidance and what everyone thought individually. And then the board would have a discussion to determine that majority opinion then for an overall rating for each one of the standards, and then also give the superintendent remarks to support that rating. Okay, if you'll advance, please. So then, if we remember in the statute and code that we were also asked to provide areas of strength, areas where more, growth and focus was needed. So again, we keep that, on the standards, and again, be able to identify which standards we feel that is the case. Also be able to provide supporting remarks to the superintendent. And then at the very end of the evaluation, there is an open-ended box for the board to provide some overall summative comments for the superintendent about the performance for that year. Okay, you'll advance, please. So then the last part of the process then is that sit-down summary conference with the superintendent. So again, the board would write the superintendent. And, as much as it said in statute and code that a majority of the board members should attend this, it's New Jersey School Board's, suggestion that all of the board members should attend this. Because one of the things that, as much as this is a majority document, one of the rights that the minority has in this process is the right to be heard. So if we look at that sample that I showed of the goal where, say, 7 board members, agreed with the superintendent and satisfactory progress was made, but 1 board member had checked the box that little or no progress was made. Well, if I was that 1 board member, odds are, the evaluation the superintendent's going to see is the majority opinion. So this then would be my opportunity as the holder of the minority opinion to say, while the other board members thought, or while the majority thought this, I thought that little or no progress was made, and this is why. So, we never know, any board member could be the holder of the minority opinion at any time. So everyone should have the opportunity to be heard then by being able to attend this summary conference. We think it's important for the board to share this annual performance report with the superintendent at least a couple days before this summary conference so that the superintendent has the opportunity to come prepared to have a meaningful discussion with the board. So you typically would have 2 copies there. Like I said, the board president and superintendent would sign each. The superintendent would receive a copy, and then the board would retain a copy for the superintendent's file. So if you want to advance, please. And then the last piece of it are just some considerations. Again, just wanting to, re-emphasize that this is not just a once a year. It's time to evaluate the superintendent. But again, the board should be mindful of all of the great work that the superintendent has done over the whole year, starting from July 1st. And also a lot of times we tend to focus on kind of what's the latest and greatest thing that's just happened. And sometimes that takes a greater role in the evaluation. And again, kind of need to take that step back and recognize our responsibility to evaluate the superintendent over the full year. I talked about the importance of evidence, and the superintendent providing evidence to the board, but also would suggest that you as a board member, that you also come up with a way to kind of save some evidence yourself. If something's come across your desk that you think, I really like this program, or I thought this was a really great idea, I'm going to put this aside and make sure that I acknowledge this in the evaluation. So, make sure, again, that you have the opportunity, to retain some evidence of your own, the importance of communication throughout this process. And I just can't emphasize enough, to the board members how important it is to exercise your governance role in this way by having your voice heard through this process. I think there's just one more slide. That just wanted to make the board members aware that New Jersey School Boards does have online resources for you for this process. There is even a narrated webinar that goes through the same PowerPoint that I just went through. So if after this is over and you had some thoughts or something that you wanted to go back and revisit, recognize that you do have that opportunity on our website. So you are welcome to stop sharing now, and wanted to see if any of the board members had any questions for me. Doesn't look like it, right?
I think we've got it from our 2 new board members. Let's start with board member Valamani and then board member Whitletter.
Okay, great.
Thanks for the presentation. I mean, my question revolves around the tool. Is this tool available to us is this just a yearly tool, or is it also a quarterly tool that we could use to collect and collate feedback?
So the board is, like I said, it's required to evaluate the superintendent at least once a year. So the online, like kind of this whole formal process is only, out there one time, but it's always on our website. So like if you wanted to, download the tool and use it your own way for your own kind of compiled, discussions, if you wanted to have more than just that annual discussion, you can use the tool, but perhaps not go through this formal process.
Thanks. Board member Whitletter.
Just a quick question for me. Thank you so much for the presentation, Charlene.
Sure.
With regard to one of the things you talked about, how some of the goals could be multi-year. When you're setting the goals, is that identified up front? And then the second piece of that is maybe you set a goal and you don't realize it's a multi-year goal until you start, doing some of the work. At what point do we identify a goal as a multi-year goal? And could that even happen during this evaluation process?
Well, I think one of the things we've learned is the way surprises can be thrown at us, right? In a school year of things that we never expected. So there are some goals that, yes, right at the onset, that it's known right at that time that it is a multi-year goal. There are other times, like I said, that it may just end up being that way because of unforeseen circumstances. So typically, the board should be receiving regular progress updates from the superintendent in terms of the progress being made on that goal, recognizing that this is not a static process. So if something needs to be changed, or if the discussion needs to be had that based on, circumstances, this needs to be a multi-year goal, it would be a conversation and an agreement that the board would have. So, I mean, ideally, it wouldn't come out at the evaluation process itself, that both the board and the superintendent should be aware and have communicated what's going on with the goals prior to the evaluation, so that when you're completing the evaluation, there's no surprises on either end.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Peterson, for giving us a presentation. And thank you to the colleagues who read the presentation in advance to make this a little bit more streamlined. So thank you. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll be speaking again soon.
Great, thank you. Good night, everyone.
Okay, back to you, Dr. Taylor.
Awesome. Thank you. It's always great to have Ms. Peterson with us. And for those folks who may not watch or attend our previous meetings, if you go on our website and you go under Board of Education and you scroll down to Board of Education presentations 21-22, and you'll see the previous district goal updates that have been done during meetings such as this. And they're right there. They're listed very, very clearly on that link on our website. Again, if you're curious, district website, Board of Education, drop down to Board of Education meetings, and then presentations, and you'll see district goal action plans, district goal updates very clearly on there. All right. So before I begin with our next presentation, I just want to ask the board and the community for a moment of silence for the victims of the recent tragic mass shooting in Buffalo, New York, as well as their families. Thank you. I also wanted to bring to the community's attention our recent communication around COVID-19 and where we are with our mitigation strategies, as well as the current Cali score for Essex County. That new communication went out last Friday. If you did not receive it or did not open it, or we're not close to your email, please check our website and our social media, and we have that update available for you. I am now going to share my screen here. Can I just have a thumbs up that you can see my screen now, please? Awesome. Thank you so much. So this presentation is all around our moratorium on student suspensions that has been discussed throughout our community and our board. Here's our agenda. We want to, of course, acknowledge those who gave their time to this process and talk about the actual resolution, talk about some of the planning and training and how we had to manage the moratorium this year and some of the tools that we use for that. Talk about and reflect on some of the task force planning meetings. Also discuss the climate survey and that process that we have undertaken for that, some of the results of that climate survey. And of course, the point of our discussion today to look deeper at our student suspensions and compare them to previous years and look at some trends that we see within them, as well as framing this conversation with research around this topic. And then we'll give a summary as well as next steps. Again, I want to pause and just give thanks to all the folks on this list who were, really supportive of this project, of taking a deep dive into students and how we support them returning from, almost 2 years of uncertainty due to COVID-19. So for those who may not be aware, on October the 18th, the following resolution 4215 was voted on and supported by the majority of the Board of Education. I'm not going to insult you by reading this to you. And also this overall report will be available under the Access and Equity tab on our website. So after this moratorium was voted on, we needed to strategize how we could make this happen in our school district on behalf of our students and also in support of our administrators. So we held meetings with our restorative practices, restorative justice consultant between November and February. We also included members of the superintendent's cabinet and also leads of ASCA, which is our principal and supervisor and assistant principal organization. We wanted to establish a methodology that would be thoughtful, not just a one-size-fits-all type of workshop. We wanted to really give thought to how we can best meet our school-based leaders where they were. We created a survey and sent it out to our school leaders to kind of serve as their opportunity for them to reflect on their perception of their level of expertise on the topic of restorative practices, restorative justice. There's a wide variety of self-described comfort on this important topic. From some folks in our district who've been with us a number of years and been through many trainings on these topics, who view themselves as experts, and some who are new to our district and have never had formal training, at least with us, on this important topic. So we use that information to customize a cohort training on restorative practices and restorative justice for our school-based leaders, our principals and assistant principals. These are some of the results of the survey that we did with our principals and assistant principals. These are kind of artifacts of their responses at that time in the fall. As you can see, there's a lot of differences in their responses. And here's some of the actual artifacts from their professional development that has been ongoing. You can see some screenshots from some of our leaders on the bottom of the screen with our consultants on this topic. And we've shared this previously as well in our district goal updates. So now that we had established that professional development, we also had to, at the same time, develop tools to manage the moratorium. So an important part of managing the moratorium on suspensions was creating a process for the review of student incidents in real time, along with the previous and future plans for restorative practices. So the fantastic folks who I had on that list who were a part of this task force, along with the folks in our office, we created a Google form that allowed school leaders to submit an incident for review along with their accompanied plans to restore the students who were involved with these incidents. And each incident was reviewed by me personally, and I was sure to do so in a timely manner, understanding how dynamic these circumstances can be. So on the bottom of the screen, you just see a few screenshots from that live Google Doc. Now, I couldn't share the actual Google Doc because it contains confidential student information. I'll just pause here for 1 second for those who want to take a quick view of this document. Let's go back here. Another important piece, just to point out as a caveat here, is that prior to the board's approval of the moratorium on suspensions for our district, we had already launched as an administration our student code of conduct. And you can see the snapshot from our website here. And this document, again, is available for anybody who would like to peruse it. And it was made with a restorative lens with regards to a response to students who need to be redirected. This was produced and published and sent to the public on September the 10th. Another part that really supported us managing the moratorium was to try and digitize student suspensions. We were already posting suspensions, and they were more of an Excel file with just raw numbers. And thanks to our work with our IT department and the rest of the team working together, we were able to develop a dashboard that broke down suspensions per month and also by demographic. And so this piece right on our website, again, under the Access and Equity tab, you can manipulate this information. You can see based on school, based on ethnicity, based on gender, et cetera, how suspensions are being levied in our school district. So of course we had to have meetings to make all these things happen. And so in concert with that launching of our professional development that we spoke about before, we also had to create the task force made up of administration, students who were from Columbia High School, as well as admin from multiple schools. We were able to, let me move my screen up just a little bit here. We have artifacts from each of those meetings in the report that will be published for anybody, again, who would like to review some of the notes from those meetings. Here are some of the highlights from the meetings that we have discussed, the task force and the restorative planning meetings. We talked about our previous iterations of restorative practices that were experienced here in our district. We talked about student feedback on the suspension moratorium and restorative practices from their lens, from their view. What do students think is happening with suspension moratorium? What do they think that means? What have they interpreted that to mean as it's been passed to them? And also we received important student feedback on Title IX. If you recall, we did have a task force on sexual assault that happened over the last summer. Again, that report is also available on our Access and Equity tab of our website. And we discussed where would students find this information, that the information, while it's in the public sphere, it wasn't in places that our student members of our task force thought students would be more likely to find it if they were looking for it. Our students also expressed what I thought was dynamite, a support for peer mediation strategies. I've seen that work in other places where peer mediation is almost like a club, and students who express interest in that club receive training, and everyone knows who they are, and they are around to help solve conflicts and offer student-led support for one another. And that was something that was brought up by our student representatives on our task force. The students also supported further transparency, as I said, beyond just the district website. Places like Canvas and our social media channels, they spoke about our student representatives on our board and how they hold Instagram chats after our meetings to help get the word to where students peruse. And that was just great information for us to get from our task force meetings. Additionally, part of our suspension moratorium was a suggestion, a directive for the district to perform climate surveys. And we were already a part of a partnership with Rutgers in previous years regarding climate surveys. And we were so fortunate that they launched a brand new climate platform called the New Jersey School Climate Improvement Platform. And it's you'll see a little bit of it here coming up soon, but that history of engagement gave us a lot of things that we could compare to this new climate survey platform. So let's look at some of those results. So again, in response to the board moratorium requests to implement school climate surveys, our ongoing partnership with Rutgers provided us access to this new pilot that just went live March 30th, 2022. The NJSCI platform, the acronym is pronounced NJSCI platform. And so again, while our district has had previous engagement around climate surveys through Rutgers, this tool is very different, and we put some evidence here that I won't bother you to go through now, but it's again in the report that explains the differences between the previous surveys and this new interactive platform. And so our representative, Dr. Bernardini, has supported our efforts as we have worked to prepare the pilot platform for our initial usage. There's a lot of setup steps for this platform. We had to do there's a lot of interactive video training when it comes to this new platform. And Principal Sanchez from Columbia High School, as well as Assistant Superintendent Badine, they worked with me to help launch our first NJSCI climate survey for our parents and our students and our staff. And we are now reviewing that first engagement to prepare the same opportunity for the stakeholders of our middle schools. And don't forget that those middle schools also had members participate from their admin teams in our task force, so they were able to review this NJSCI platform through Dr. Bernardini's presentations to the task force. So here's a couple of snapshots from this interactive piece. You can see here that first line tells you the number of students who participated in this first go around. It tells you what grade those students were in and the breakdown of that. It tells you the number of staff members who participated previously, and tells you how many families participated, et cetera. It gives a lot of information, and again, more information than I could put on this screen, but a lot of great information for us to use moving forward. This also gives you a breakdown of the responses to the survey. I'm speaking to, for example, the first student sense of belonging, and what were the responses broken down, whether they agreed or disagreed or strongly agreed with the statements in that part of the survey. Goes down again to your physical sense of safety. 64% of those who were part of this survey agreed with those statements that were shared, and so on and so forth. And again, it's super interactive. You can see just from these snapshots that there's just a lot of information that was not a part of previous surveys that we were able to use. Still sharing here, and you can see that we are able to, with these links on top of the page, we can choose different lenses to use when comparing. So just to give you a broad comparison of this survey instrument versus our previous survey that we completed for climate survey in 2020, the number of staff who participated decreased from 91 to 80. We have more than twice as many parents or family guardians participated this time. And I'm reading right here on the bottom of our screen in the blue. More than twice as many families participated in this time, 455 versus 200. This is only focusing in again on Columbia High School. But we did have a third fewer students participate, 680 versus 400. So we're using and we're analyzing this information to plan our next steps with our middle schools. And again, next year's round for all of our secondary students. And one of the great parts about this, again, is that we're in the pilot stage of this. Not every school district has access to this tool right now. So now to our suspension data. We want to provide lots of context and slice this data as many ways as we could so that we could find a deeper level of understanding of the results of the suspension moratorium for our first year, understanding that even now, right, it's May 16th, the school year is not over. And for us to analyze this data, we had to take a snapshot with enough time in front of this presentation. So there's probably a little bit of a skew in the data when you look at our dashboard today versus when we took these snapshots to prepare this data for this presentation. And so if you want to know the categories of suspension for this school year under the moratorium, this is a breakdown of the number of suspensions that would fall under each of these categories. We also have shared in our previous district goal presentations information around risk ratio, how we can place risk ratio as part of our student information system so that we can use that information to take deeper dives into analysis to make data-driven decisions. So this is a snippet from that presentation on March 21st. And in short, a risk ratio equal to 1 means that the outcomes of both groups that you're comparing are identical. Again, a risk ratio equal to 1, the number 1, means that the outcomes of both groups that you are comparing are identical. And so what I'm going to share with you are first from the district-wide perspective. What you see here on your very first slide on top is our district-wide suspensions from 2015-16 in blue for context, district-wide, 2018-19 in red, 2019-20 in yellow. During last school year, during the COVID shutdown, we did not have student suspensions. And this year, when this snapshot was taken earlier in the month. I know that this chart begs the question of what about 2016-17? What about 2017-18? What I can tell you and be very forthright that we had a really hard time finding information for those years that we thought was reliable enough to include in such an important presentation. And so you'll see at the end of this presentation some recommendations around that. On the bottom of this slide, you see again the risk ratio that we've spoken about in the previous 2 slides for our district-wide data. And again, the blue bars are 2018-2019 for your risk ratio. The red bars are 2019-2020 for your risk ratio. There is no yellow, but yellow is for 2020, 2021, and green is for this year. On top of your slide here, you see designations for race. And these racial designations are, again, self-identified when students and families register for our school district. And so if you recall, 1 is our, go back here just so we can, oops. Keith, I'm having a little bit of a sticking issue here. I don't know if you can go back for me.
No, you'll have to press escape on your keyboard. There you go.
Oh, there I go. All right, thank you.
Uh,
The genius Keith always at work for us, supporting us. Thank you. There we go. Remember that if our risk ratio equals 1, that means that the groups are identical. That's an important piece for the review of the risk ratio charts on the bottom of our screens here. And so you can see that under the designation B for Black students, we have seen an improvement as the risk ratio has gone down dramatically over the years. However, it's still above 1, which means that for the 2021-2022 school year, in those 36 suspensions that we're talking about, a Black student is 3 times as likely to be suspended. Hispanic students, similar. And you can see that all the other designations are less than 1, which for this particular data is what is desirable for us all, of course. Columbia High School, looking at 2018-2019 suspensions, 2019-2020, and 21-22. Again, you've seen a dramatic decrease in suspensions while we've been in the suspension moratorium. And when you look at the likelihood of a student being suspended based on risk ratio applied to their race. You can see for yourself here what the data reads for us across the chart. Maplewood Middle School, again, a dramatic reduction in suspensions as you would expect during a moratorium, and also just a tremendous drop in the likelihood for suspension for a student, for Black students in this category. South Orange Middle School. Again, I won't repeat myself, but I think that the charts are pretty clear. And our elementary schools, which of course very rarely have suspensions. But the data is here to reflect it. And one of the reasons why we wanted to put this data on the same slide is for context when comparing some of the risk ratio. As we've shared in our committee meetings, the risk ratio begins to lose some of its stickiness when the numbers get small like this. Marshall. As you can see from the elementary schools, most have no suspensions this year from the lack of green markings on either of these charts. South Mountain, Tuscan. Now, we always try to look at research that is scholarly in nature to be able to share what does the world outside of our school district look like and say about this? What are researchers finding? I mean, here are a few that are pretty recent. And so again, I won't insult you by reading to you, but there's a lot of good information here around this topic and the trends that we're seeing in it, and the trends of disproportionate rates of suspension for students. This is a great chart that I pulled from this research. And if you look at this closely, it kind of mirrors the United States of America, right? It's almost a map, and each of those squares represents a state. And if you look at each of those little corners of the square, you have the state letters there. And you also, past those abbreviations, you see a number. And the number for this chart, and there are many more that are just like it. That's why we share these links for anybody who would be interested in kind of nerding out like I do and looking at this data. It shows you the likelihood of your suspension and the gap of your suspension depending upon your race, or in a different similar graph, they have it based on disabilities. Students who have IEPs, and the gap between them and their general education fellow students. But as you can see, some of these numbers are just unbelievable for different states when doing this comparison and this work. And also bringing it back home to New Jersey, I think was really important. So we found and did some research on the latest review of this information based on the Educational Law Center. And as you can see on the left-hand side there, we pulled out this information that from 2018 to 2019, 55,000 students received at least one in or out of school suspension compared to 50,000 the year before, and that's an 11% increase. And this represents a rise in the overall suspension rate from 3.6% to 4% for all students. And so in taking this data to frame the context of our school district, if you go back to that previous number that we have almost 6,800, 6,900 students. And even if you put that 3 to 4% average on 7,000 kids, let's do a math quiz. Any board member want to give me the answer? What will it give you? I know it's gonna be the board president. Go ahead, give it to me.
4% of 7,000?
Yep.
280.
Right.
280.
Right. So if our district was at this rate of 3.6 to 4% of student suspensions happening for the students enrolled for our district, that number would be about 280 kids. And so you can see in the previous data that we shared, we've been far under that even prior to the moratorium. And now it's just great seeing those numbers that have dropped so significantly. So here's a summary and some next steps. Our district's suspension data and comparison, it reflects a trend of improvement regarding both the number of students suspended, the percentage of suspensions per our overall enrollment, as well as the demographic disparity when applying the risk ratio. It doesn't mean that we are satisfied with this work. We're just giving you a summary of the data that we compared. And again, while this trajectory was moving in an encouraging direction, our current data strongly suggests that the board's moratorium had a direct impact on a greater reduction than would have been expected. Our school-based administrators' feedback on their restorative practices, restorative justice, professional development has been very positive, both the content as well as the presenters. The difficulty in collecting and analyzing past years' suspension data, it leads us to believe that we need to shift all of our collection of suspension data for future years to Power School and only Power School as a single repository, because we just found information in so many different places, even physical paper that we had to use and analyze by hand. So that is one of the next steps, most certainly for next year. And again, despite the conclusion of the moratorium, meaning that the timing of it has concluded, we will continue the formal practice of requiring restorative connections to suspension requests, and they will be consistently reviewed by myself or one of our cabinet members as a designee. So suspension will continue to be formally tabulated per school monthly on our publicly facing platform, the dashboard that I showed you here. And per the recommendations of our task force student representatives, we will add Title IX and Code of Conduct and Restorative Practices resources to other platforms that students are more likely to peruse, such as Canvas, social media, etc. Our district will continue our pilot engagement with NJSKI and that platform to expand our scope. That our goal next year will be to have every school participate. For our youngest students, it may only be our staff and parents, depending upon the age appropriateness of it. Our new assistant superintendent of access and equity will work closely with our school-based administrators to work as thought partners with regard to continuing the encouraging improvement that we're seeing in our suspension data and keeping our students in schools utilizing a restorative lens. Throughout this process, our leadership team kept the work of our sexual assault task force top of mind, as their report had connections to student consent, immediate triage for students in crisis, and a flow chart to consistently govern our staff responses to those incidents as they are reported. And of course, prevention is at the heart of all this work, preventing suspensions, and of course, without it even being said, sexual assault. So I know that board members have already had a chance to send questions, but for our board president, I can accept more if you would like. I know we are pressing for time a little bit.
Thank you. First, thank you for that, Dr. Taylor. Yes, we are. We went 9 minutes over. We're trying to get you to 20. It's okay. So yes, the board did send over 14 questions. We did get this presentation in advance, sent over 14 questions, some of which you did address this evening and others which you intimated would require a bit more research. And so you were looking forward to doing that. But I did want to give everybody the opportunity to either ask a question that didn't come up or a comment generally. So I will go around While you were speaking, I broke out the randomizer. But before we get to the board members, we'll start with our student rep, Noah Morose.
Awesome, thank you. So I just had a quick question about the slide that you showed about the suspensions generally just over time on the histogram. So suspensions that were listed this year, are those suspensions that were carried out this year, or are they rather incidents that would have merited suspension in a normal year, but not all of them were suspended due to the restrictions from the moratorium?
No, those are suspensions that have been reviewed and approved.
Okay, so is there, I'm assuming not, but is there any way to not see, or I don't know, is there any way to see where those incidents in a normal year without it would have merited suspension, but didn't due to the moratorium this year? What the drop off would have been between a normal year and this year?
That's a great question. And all, what this work did for me, and I think it's doing the same thing for you, Noah, is it just makes you want to know more, right? And it makes you want to dig deeper. And part of what our frustration and one of my comments I made at the last board meeting is just having enough resources. As we saw from our previous presenter, there's just a lot of work that happens around the school district, a lot of managing, even in a non-COVID year. And so part of my excitement with our new assistant soup and soon to be new director of access and equity was to have more expertise to take a deeper dive, because some of this stuff is literally hand-based reviews of things. And one of the questions that was asked by a board member, just scroll over here to the other page, it might assist with answering your question as well. It was about, for example, what makes one fight have a suspension and another fight have a suspension? Are all fights going to result in suspensions? And so we gave a detailed explanation of that review, right? That how serious an altercation is, if a student has to be seen by an ambulance, right, or other emergency personnel, if this is a connection with an HIB piece where students are being targeted, or if a student is, obviously not participating in a fight but being assaulted. All those are key factors that we use in measuring this information. But I understand your question of kind of the null hypothesis, right? How many would have been but weren't, right? That kind of comparison. I wouldn't be able to give you that information now, but I can hope, my hope and plans are that after our school year ends, I'm able to take a deeper dive with our team into some of this stuff and then finalize the report with other layers of review.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and I know that you said that this is something that even if it's not, fully in place, something that you kind of want to keep following next year. So I think even just thinking about it next year to see the effectiveness of, this kind of new system is tracking that data next year, just so we can see what difference we would have had. So.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that, as administrators, we often say, we have little colloquialisms that we say, and one is what gets monitored gets done. Right? You can't monitor every single thing, but what you shine a light on and give attention to, many times you see movement in those topics. So most definitely, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Student Rep Morose. We'll start with the board members now. We'll go board member Wingfield, followed by Malaspina, and then Valamani.
Thank you, and thank you for that presentation. I guess want to make a couple of comments. I guess first want to thank you and the district team for what obviously was an enormous amount of work and investment in both time and resources to respond to the resolution and put together the task force to not only make the necessary adjustments, but also study and sort of stay in a space of curiosity throughout the year as you continue to work on this. I know that this was a challenging year for a number of reasons, and we saw many districts across the country's suspension rates spike this year as a result of just many of the challenges that young people and adults are facing. And so it says a lot that the district was able to respond in this particular way to be able to get the results that you ultimately just shared. Obviously, the results to me really speak volumes. And I think that while that was a big motivator of, I think, the resolution of the moratorium in the first place, I think something that many of us didn't anticipate was how valuable it was to peel back the curtain and be able to engage with you and with other members of the SLT throughout the year. And obviously you with your team about just the process we're using and challenging the status quo of the way that we go about issuing and considering discipline in the first place. I imagine that those conversations were rich and very valuable on your end, because I know that they were for us. And I think that it puts us all in a place of considering how we can do things different, and that we don't just have to continue to issue an out of school punitive response just because that's how we've always done it. I do want to lift up, and I don't think it's overstated to say that, you know, while we don't know, to Noah's point, exactly how many students would have received a suspension based on the data that you shared previous to the COVID years, it's pretty easy to imagine that dozens, if not hundreds of students would have likely received an out of school suspension this year who didn't. And that ultimately likely results in literally thousands of instructional hours that students did not miss this year as a result of not having to serve an out of school suspension. And you alluded to the research that shows the impact of that kind of data. I just want to sort of, I guess, issue a warning, and I really appreciate what you just said, Dr. Taylor, about the idea that what gets monitored gets done. And I think that I'm not speaking for my board colleagues, but for myself personally, one of my bigger concerns is that moving out of this formal moratorium time-bound phase into a sort of so what, now what process in the district, the fear is that the rubber band theory will begin to take place and we'll begin to snap right back into the kind of knee-jerk habits that I think got us into these high numbers in the first place. And I guess I want to say that for myself personally, I see a new baseline of data that the district is moving from. And I hope that not just my fellow board colleagues, but our community will hold this district accountable for that new baseline and hold high expectations for us continuing to monitor and keep those numbers as low as possible.
Thank you. Board Member Malaspina and then Board Member Valimani.
I have a few things, and I guess my first question goes to Courtney, who stated that she was got to engage in great conversations with the administration around how we wanted this process to look, and you know, about restorative portions. Were all board members offered that opportunity to participate?
Before we get into this, let me just, you know, this is an opportunity for comments to Dr. Taylor, not time for dialogue with each other. So if you have questions or comments for Dr. Taylor regarding the presentation, this is the appropriate time to do that.
Okay,
this is
well,
not appropriate time
I
for
will just say that
interrogation of our fellow colleagues. Thank you.
I was just trying to understand since I wasn't afforded that opportunity. But so back to some questions for Dr. Taylor. Dr. Taylor, you said that you relied a lot on the task force, but when I looked at the documents for the task force and the attendance for the task force, out of the 20 people that you listed as being on the task force, 8 of them never participated in a meeting. But only 5 of them participated in all 3 meetings, and 2 had participated in 1 meeting, and 3 participated in 2 meetings. So I'm not trying to understand how you were able to get, you know, a broad array of voices when there were only 5 people that really participated in all the meetings.
I'm going to share that slide. Can you all still hear me? Yes. I want to share that slide because I want to be as transparent and clear as possible. Give me 1 second. So I intentionally listed this as folks who were members of the task force or those who contributed to this work. And I think that would be my answer to your question, that attending a task force or restorative practices planning session is not the limit to folks who contributed to this work. I'll give you a few examples of folks who I would brag about, right? For those who know, we call him the wizard behind the curtain, right? Manjeet, who just does such a thorough job with student information and student information systems. He wouldn't be required to attend any of those task force or restorative practices training preparation meetings, but he, along with Mr. Bonds and Liana in my office, supported this work with just elbows deep, going through just years and years of data, literally, to create this. So I hope that offers clarity that it's not about specific attendance at specific meetings. This was several months long work that we have just shared this evening. I hope that helped.
That helped a little. I do have some other questions. One is why we're in the moratorium document, it stated that teachers would be included and there are no teachers on this task force. Can we explain why that did not happen?
No, I don't have any excuse for why teachers were not participating. I just tried to hold our task force meetings at the time that the student representatives who were selected by the school administration were able to participate, and also understanding that there are just contractual limitations on participation for all of our staff members. I'll give you another instance there. At our middle schools, the assistant principals do the lunch duty, right? And so between teacher evaluations and lunch duty, et cetera, the time that they were locked in was really 1:15. That's the time that I could really gather everyone together to contribute to this work. It doesn't mean that we can't get more feedback from teachers. As I said, I'm going to continue to add on to this report with the new resources that we have with Dr. Gilbert, our new assistant soup of access and equity, and other team members who will now have a little more time on their hands because some of our most time specific tasks are coming to an end.
Were they offered the opportunity to participate and didn't, or was it that they were never asked?
I think I answered that question. That's about as far as I can go into that.
Thank you, Board Member Melsman. That was three
I-
questions. Board Member Melsman, you've asked 3 questions. I'm going to move forward with others. Board Member Valamani and then Board Member Siders. Thank you.
I just had one suggestion for the next time around. Again, this goes back to the constitution, of the task force. Given that boys disproportionately get more suspensions than girls, I think it makes sense to have some representation from them in the task force. This would be like having it doesn't matter. But well, yeah, that's my only suggestion I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Siders. Oh, do you want to comment, Dr.
Yeah,
Taylor?
I was going to share that I purposefully did not participate in who was selected because I didn't want it to be accused of, grabbing my favorites. And, one of our favorites is on the screen here, right? And so I allowed our administrators to select. And now that we're going to the middle schools with our survey, that's a perfect time for us to be able to add more folks just for more context. And again, this is a living document, so we can add to it whatever information that the board and maybe even others who want to share feedback are interested in.
Thank you. Board Member Siders and then Board Member Wright.
Hello. Thank you, Dr. Taylor, for this presentation. One item that I wanted to lift up is that our Columbia High School student leaders were really in support of this moratorium and have taken that additional review at, looking at district suspensions. I think somewhere in one of your slides, it might not have been one that you showed tonight, but I think it said that 23% of our administrators have been hired in the last 2 years. And of course, that was during a pandemic, during virtual learning. And that many of our building leaders did stress that they felt they could use some more PD on restorative practices. And as we all know, you can't get too much training. So I just wanted to say thank you, Dr. Taylor, and to the task force for this important work. For me, it shows that this was the right decision to make.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the kind words, and it was truly a team effort. And one thing that I keep bragging about our team, one thing that that Dr. Gilbert shared with me today during our one-on-one on his first day. Wave at everyone, Dr. Gilbert down there, our new assistant super for access and equity, who joins us from the Washington, D.C., Maryland area, is that he's going to do a national presentation this summer on restorative justice, restorative practices in Chicago, right? So we are always trying to have expertise on our team on these important topics as well. So thank you for that reflection.
Thank you. Board Member Wright and then Whitletter.
Sorry, my hand must have been up. I don't know how to take it down if it is up.
No.
You know.
I just want to make sure everyone had an opportunity to comment. So if you don't have one, that's fine. I'll move on to Board Member Whitletter, and then I'll close out this discussion.
Thank you so much for the presentation, Dr. Taylor. I just have one question and one comment. So I'll start with the question first. During the moratorium, we saw that the risk ratio actually increased substantially for our Hispanic student population. So district-wide, it went from 1 times risk ratio to about 3. And then at CHS, it went from 1 to 4.5. Can you explain why that was?
It would take more research to understand why, but I also did note that, and that's why I wanted to make sure that I went slowly over each one of those risk ratio charts, because that'll be some of our next steps with the leadership there to analyze that.
And then I just echo what Arun said. I would have liked to have seen broader representation of students on the task force. I think it would have been great if we actually included a student who had experienced a suspension in the district, a student who, maybe was also participatory in the restorative justice piece of this, because I know the code of conduct has existed since 2019. So to have that frame of reference and perspective would have been really vital on the task force, and that's something that I hope we can incorporate going forward.
Thank you for the feedback.
All right, Dr. Taylor. Again, just thank you for this. Like I said, we've asked 14 questions. We've heard a couple more this evening, and I will ask my colleagues if they have some that did not come up this evening or that they haven't had an opportunity to raise with Dr. Taylor. Actually, I just want to make sure there was actually 15. We did get one follow-up today, so 15 in advance, a couple more here today, and I presume there'll be an opportunity to add more. I'll collect those and send those over to you as well. And again, I just want to thank you for all this work. We recognize that while it wasn't in the goal per se, it does fall into one of the characteristics that comes up in the evaluation. So we do appreciate that. Board Member Wright.
Yeah, I'm a little befuddled here. The Hispanic student population had significant increases, and we don't understand why. Does anyone know why? Because we have a lot of things that we have to deal with, and children basically are saying with the moratorium, they know nothing's going to happen to them anyway, and so they continue to do the things that they do. But that's alarming to me, and I'd like to know why.
Well, I think we just heard that question, and Dr. Taylor is going to do the research. So appreciate you echoing that statement. Thank you. We'll now move on to the President's report. Okay, this evening, the Board of Education will be voting to ratify the memorandum of agreement between the South Orange Maplewood Board of Education and the South Orange Maplewood Education Association. I did ask leadership from SOMA if they wanted the opportunity to make a statement ahead of time. And I'm guessing it's because of the hour, but they chose to decline. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to bring forth resolution 4306 for a vote. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Board Member Wingfield. All in favor? All right. Mr. Burnside, can you please call the roll for resolution 4306? Actually, before you do that, let me read it just so that we I'm going to read it. Give me 1 second, just so everyone is aware. No, I'm not reading the whole MOA. No, just the resolution. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the memorandum of agreement for a successor contract between the South Orange Maplewood Board of Education and the South Orange Maplewood Education Association be approved as per the agreement. Now, Mr. Vice Secretary, please call the roll.
Board President Joshua,
Oops. Yes.
Board Member Malaspina,
Yes.
Board Member Siders,
Yes.
Board Member Vadlamani,
Yes.
Board Member Wingfield,
Yes.
Board Member Whitletter,
Yes.
Board Member Wright.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, and congratulations to both the negotiations committee who helped us diligently work towards it, and also our partners from SOMAN as well, who worked diligently towards a fair contract negotiated in good faith. I'll now continue with the President's report. I attended the May Essex County School Board Association meeting where new leadership for the School Board Association was elected for the 22-23 school year. Congratulations to colleagues from Newark, Milburn, and Montclair who were elected to various positions. As you heard earlier, Board Member Siders was recognized for achieving the new board member certification. And also during the meeting, we had a governmental update on several bills that are currently in committee for both the Senate and Assembly. And additionally, there was a presentation by Superintendent Newell of the Essex County Education Services Commission, on which I sit as a member. I will forward those presentations and the governmental update to my colleagues tomorrow. Underhill Field closed today for renovations. The work is expected to be completed by early September. I just want to provide that reminder again for the community. As we heard during this evening's presentation from Charlene Peterson over in JSBA, the board will be conducting its chief school administrator or superintendent evaluation process. The board will meet on June 9th, June 20th, and June 29th to conduct the superintendent's evaluation. We will also do a board self-evaluation, which is part of a summer retreat. And in June, I also want to note in June that we'll feature several in-person end-of-year celebrations with citizen families, and the board looks forward to participating in those events with the community. The deadline to file the petition for the next school board election is Monday, July 25th at 4 p.m. Information for running for school board can be found on the Essex County Clerk's Office website. The election will be held on Election Day, Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. This evening, we are voting on Resolution 4307 to approve mission statements for the standing committees. This was something most recently done by the board in 2017. And I want to thank my colleagues for working diligently to put these statements together. This evening, we are voting on Resolution 4304F, which is to repeal Policy 8830 for patriotic observances. As Board Member Bergen mentioned last week during the policy committee discussion, it's an outdated policy that was targeted for review because it was last adopted in 2001. And our best practice is for all policies to be reevaluated every few years. This policy is now contained in the Strauss Esme manual, and the holidays that the references are not up to date. As part of the review in advance of making a recommendation to abolish this policy, committee members did a spot check of similar and nearby districts. None of them currently have this policy. Also, please note that abolishing 8830 will not prevent the district from raising or lowering the flag and will not affect saluting in classrooms, which is covered by policy 8820. Also this evening, the board will be voting on Resolution 4300AE to amend the board meeting calendar. Starting in August, meetings will be held on the last Thursday of every month, barring holidays. The new dates will be August 25th, September 29th, October 27th, November 17th, and December 15th. This change is being made in response to feedback from the business office to improve operational efficiency and was discussed during new business on Monday, May 9th. And lastly, please note Board Member Malaspina will not be participating in any discussion or vote on Resolution 4304D, which is Policy 5124 on internal student transfers. This policy is related to the implementation of the district's integration plan, and the plan is noted in paragraph 4 of the settlement agreement and is therefore considered a matter related to the litigation. That concludes the President's report. I'll now turn it over to our State Representative, Noah Morris, for his Student Representative report.
Great, thank you. The sun is shining and students are beginning to get their first taste of summer. When passing by CHS, it's common to see students eating lunch under the cherry blossoms or even throwing a frisbee around. The reason besides the weather, AP exams are finally over for the year, marking the end to a rigorous academic course load for many students at Columbia High School. I want to say thank you to all the amazing teachers that hosted review sessions outside of school hours, communicated with students over spring break, and put their all into preparing students for the exams. Your hard work and dedication is felt by and appreciated by every student. The administrators and guidance department also did a great job administering the exams in a manner that didn't disrupt student schedules or disrupt students during the exams. So thank you to them as well. An end to AP exams also means the annual, and now back in person, special dance company performance. I had the chance to see the performance on Saturday night, and it was amazing. All of the dances are fully choreographed by the members of the special dance company, showing the true creativity that we have in our district. All the members and advisor, Ms. Candace Pointe-de-Jour, did an amazing job and left the whole community waiting for next year's performance. The Columbia High School Student Council has also been hard at work per usual, and is focused on ending the year with a bang. Aside from planning prom and the Hall of Fame ceremony, we're hosting our first ever spring badminton tournament this Thursday at CHS. Visitors are welcome with a small fee of $1. So if you feel like supporting the student council and watching some high quality badminton, swing by. We'd be happy to see you. More importantly though, this evening, we just passed item 4306, a contract that compensates our teachers higher for their work, a contract that will impact every student in our district. Our students will now be able to receive help after the 9th period bell, participate in their extracurriculars to their heart's content, and be able to enjoy an all-round outstanding educational experience. Vanessa and I have pushed hard for compromise and a contract agreed upon since October of this year. And we're both so happy to see the compromise was reached and that we can move on to supporting our students, the true goal of both parties. Recently, Vanessa and I had our monthly meeting with Dr. Taylor, talking about a range of issues from the CHS pool to continued mental health support. From this conversation, Vanessa and I are beginning to build supports for CHS students to receive mental health help this summer outside of school. We need to support the student that struggles when there's no one to help them in the summer, no office to go to. We need to provide trusted adults when that student may not have any during the summer. As stated in the last board meeting, mental health is extremely important to both Vanessa and myself. We're willing to work until we can provide help to every single student in need, in school or out of school. That concludes this month's student representative update. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to email me. My email can be found on the board members page of the SOMSD website. And Vanessa and I would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
And a special acknowledgement for our alternate student rep, Vanessa Prevalon, who was also in the special dance company, and I had a wonderful time seeing her Friday evening. Right, we are now at the time for our hearings of individuals and delegates, known as public speaks. This is an opportunity for you to share your concerns about an item on the agenda, but is not a time for dialogue with the board. The board requests that you state your name and the town of your residence for the record. We will set the time limit to 2 minutes for each speaker, and we ask that you respect that time limit. We must cut you off so it does not appear as if we're giving anyone an advantage to share their views over another individual. Speakers have the full protection of free speech during public speaks. However, this form does not protect you from the subject of your free speech from pursuing libel or slander charges. And finally, the board recommends that all members of our community pursue the chain of command. Our first public speaks is from Brandon Jones.
I do not see that community member.
Okay, thank you. Our next public speaks is from Vanessa Santana.
Hi, hello, good evening. I'm Vanessa Santana from South Orange, and I'm the mother of a pre-K student currently enrolled in the district, and I just wanted to voice my concerns over, the ever-changing COVID policies. I want to thank the superintendent in the district about keeping the mandatory masking for young children that don't have any other means to be protected at the moment. And I really want to voice my request to keep that mandate until we have other means to keep our children protected. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you. All right, our next public speaks is from Stacy Sands de Viteri.
Hi, I'll try to make this as fast as I can read it. I am from New Jersey, so that should be easy. So my name is Dr. Science de Viteri. I'm a mom to a toddler and a scientist with a PhD in neuroscience. And over the past few days, I've seen our district casually ignore local, state, and national guidance from the scientific and public health community on how to handle a situation rapidly spiraling towards completely uncontrolled spread of COVID. And, I've heard in the past parents talk about how COVID isn't serious or how masks don't work or are harmful to children, how cases don't matter, or that death is the only noteworthy COVID outcome. And on top of that, they want to advocate for for mask optional policies in pre-Ks when these children can't be vaccinated. And I felt that it was important to note that COVID is not a cold. It mutates rapidly with no herd immunity in sight. And on top of that, cases are increasing so much that we are now considered a high transmission county in May because of poor policies. And let's be honest, about COVID, 1 million people are dead in this country, 1,200 children, and a third of them under 5. In January, it was the 4th leading cause of death in kids aged 5 to 15. And the deaths are bad enough, but we should also be worried about long-term effects of COVID on the developing brain. And some of the most critical stages of learning and development are 1, from birth to 5 years old, which is the only age group unable to be vaccinated, and 2, adolescence. And given that COVID has been shown to cause cell death and increased inflammation in the brain, we should be concerned about COVID infections in children who are undergoing rapid neural development. And masks are the best way to prevent COVID infection. Masks are safe, even though some people have spread misinformation on this topic, and they've never been shown to affect learning and development in children over time. And, I'd be happy to provide peer-reviewed literature in case anyone's interested. I did previously send an email to Dr. Taylor and the Board of Ed the week before masks were lifted in the grade schools, saying that lifting masks would be premature and would result in in-school transmission at high levels. And here we are. Universal masking has had to be implemented in 2 elementary schools already after many, many children, teachers, and their families have had to suffer through COVID infections as well as virtual learning when we want our kids healthy and in school. Please do not make the same mistake again. Universal masking should be kept in the pre-Ks and
Thank you.
during
Your
this
time
time
is
of
up.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next public speaks is from Allison Weiss.
I do not see that community member.
Our next public speaks is from Nella Hadzik.
Hi, community member Hadzik. Can you please unmute your microphone? We may need to move on and come back.
All right. Our next public speaks is from Eli Bullen.
Hello?
Hi, good evening. You have 2 minutes.
Great, thank you. I'm Eli Bolin. I live in Maplewood. I'm a dad to 2 boys, ages 7 and 4. My children, along with numerous others in the district, receive their pediatric care from Watchung Pediatrics in Milburn. I recently sent you their full updated guidance, but I'd like to highlight the most important part. It says, if your child is symptomatic and tests positive on a home test or at an outside testing facility, it's considered a true positive. There's no need to repeat it. If your child had a rapid test that was positive, a PCR will not, in all caps, be done. To be clear, the doctor's office refuses to conduct in-office testing of any kind if an at-home rapid test is positive, noting that they are reliable positives. So why is SOMSD directly contradicting advice being given by pediatricians? Counting rapids for virtual learning, but not for the dashboard, doesn't make logical sense. Why is it sufficient for one and not the other when medical professionals have deemed them to be sufficient, especially in light of PCR shortages? Voluntary district testing does not compensate for this, and its limited availability is a high barrier to access for many, and now it is unnecessary given the updated information. I understand if this was previously part of DOH guidance that suggested reliance on PCR tests, but at this point that guidance is outdated. Why isn't the district willing to evolve and go above and beyond to protect our students? Why do the bare minimum? Parents are making risk assessments about whether to mask because leadership will only strongly recommend when a mandate is actually what's needed. But they're making these assessments based on inaccurate information that is deflating the true level of positive cases and spread within schools. This not only affects students within the district, it affects our entire community. My 4-year-old attends a Maplewood preschool that follows the policy dictated by SOMSD. If indoor mask mandates fall for the under 5 population, despite there still being no vaccine available for this age group, this vulnerable population will be put even more at risk. Some have spoken of parent choice, but if the last public health measure for our youngest children falls, I lose my choice to send my child to school with any mitigation to a novel virus that has killed over 1 million Americans and has rendered millions more with ongoing health problems that are still being studied. A mask mandate for children who are ineligible for a vaccine must remain in place, and positive at-home tests must be counted toward the district numbers in order to keep our community safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public speaks is from, well, before we, can we try Nella Hadzik again?
Hi, Nayla. Can you try unmuting your microphone?
Hello?
Hi, good evening. You have 2
Oh,
minutes.
okay, at last. Hi, I am Nella Hadzik. I'm a resident of South Orange. I am the parent of a child in the district. I came here tonight to say that the decision to remove the mask mandate in schools has now resulted in very high spread, which was predicted. Even in the best case scenario of COVID infection, when all members of a household fare well with the virus, kids miss school, grown-ups miss work. This is a best case scenario. This alone is reason enough to keep to step up and deal with the existence of COVID properly in our schools. The 2 things that are needed from you now are clear on and off ramps for mandatory indoor masking. The second thing is improvements in adequate ventilation on all fronts. Where is the designated air quality officer? I have read that this person exists. I've yet to see a report from him or a statement. I found it extremely telling that Dr. Taylor went through the trouble of removing a reference to adequate ventilation when quoting New Jersey Department of Health guidance in his email. To me and to others, that signals that the district is aware of the importance of adequate ventilation and is either unable or unwilling to deliver the key mitigation measure for an airborne virus. You are elected leaders. You were chosen to lead by making a recommendation and not a mandate when the numbers call for it. You are literally leaving your responsibility in the hands of children. To me, that's unacceptable.
Thank you. Our next public speaks is from Daniel Kaplan.
I do not see that community member.
Okay, thank you. Our next public speaks is from Amanda Burns El Hassani. I apologize if I mispronounced that.
Hello.
Hi, good evening. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you. Hello, my name is Amanda Burns El Hassouni, and my good friend Soraya Shalfarouche will also be speaking tonight. We both have sons in 8th grade Psalms and MMS, and both missed a day of school due to Muslim holiday Eid al-Fitr. This holiday comes at the end of Ramadan, a month of fasting and charity. Eid is supposed to be celebrated with food, friends, family, and gifts. However, our sons do not have the luxury of a day off. They miss school. We cannot share this holiday with others as they are in school as well, and there's no mention of the holiday Ramadan Eid al-Fitr from our school district or our community. We just celebrated Ramadan from April 2nd to May 1st, Eid falling on May 2nd, and absolute silence from our community leaders and the school district. I'm speaking out due to 2 things: inspiration from a petition for observance of Eid holidays from middle schoolers who aren't necessarily Muslims, but are moved by the inequity and lack of inclusion of Muslim holidays on our school calendars. I commend this behavior in our young people and in our community, that they care enough to take action. Also, this is very personal. My son and husband are Muslim, fasted the entire month, and not looking for congratulations or applause. A little respect would go a long way. I know many families who feel met with silence when it comes to Muslim holidays, and it's just not okay. Why can't there be more consideration or mention of these holidays? In so many local districts, there are. I'm a local art teacher and teach in surrounding school districts that have the day off, or at the very least acknowledge the holiday by wishing Happy Eid al-Fitr for all those celebrating. It's meaningful. I'm asking for Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha off, 2 important Muslim holidays. If you want to represent a school district that is as diverse as ours, that includes all people of different faiths and genders and ethnicity, you must do better by the Muslim community and include them in holidays off on the school calendar. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public speaks is from Lana Stapleton.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. I had hoped to attend in person this week, as I had hoped last week when I was home caring for my sick children. But despite the weather tonight, I would not have been able to attend because I am now sick myself with COVID. And to be clear, my older child contracted COVID through an in-school transmission at Marshall School. Now in our 2nd week of COVID infection in my house, my business, which is a home daycare, has suffered substantial financial losses. I have not been able to open my school to the families who rely on me to care for their young children. They have been forced into the same position as the families in our district were forced into for a year and a half. They are suffering financial losses. Their children are suffering. They are not even district families yet, but they are community members and they are negatively impacted. Is this because I have allowed sick children into my school? No. Is this because I have allowed unvaccinated families to enroll in my school? No. Is this because I have substandard HVAC and failed to provide open windows, doors, HEPA filters in my school? No. Is this because I have been unclear in my expectations of my staff and the families I serve? No. This is because I sent my masked kindergartner to her district school, where the superintendent has been unclear in his expectations of staff and families, where the superintendent has allowed years to go by without making upgrades to bring HVAC up to pre-COVID air quality standards, where the superintendent has washed his hands of COVID safety measures. The main differences are, in the school I oversee, I promptly notify families of any exposure and I make changes based on current risks. Therefore, not one of the children I care for, not one of their family members, and not one of my staff members or their family members has contracted COVID through transmission in my school. It's not that hard to look at numbers, look at science, look at facts, look at news, and adapt Have a plan, make a choice, say, okay, we're going to try doing mask optional. Here are the rules. Windows open, ventilation on, masks are required at gatherings over 50 people. They're required for 2 weeks when there's a positive case in a class. They're required when the Cali score moves up to high. We will let you know if your kid has been exposed and how many kids in the school have COVID. Would it have been that hard to just set some guidelines and enforce them? Do you need help with this? I know a whole bunch of parents who could set you up with a system. In fact, we just set up a parent-run self-reporting COVID tracking system because you didn't. I mean, at least if you're going to give up on COVID, you could get the pool fixed. And by the way, Dr. Taylor, I heard you say earlier you were trying to be as transparent as possible about something. I almost choked on my tea.
Thank you. Your time is up. Our next public speaks is from Soraya Shalfarush. And again, I apologize if I mispronounced it.
Hello?
Hi, good evening. You have 2
Hi,
minutes.
thank you. Hi, I'm Soraya Shalfush. I'm a Maplewood resident and I'm a mom of a student at MMS. And I'm speaking in conjunction with what Amanda has also spoke to about getting Laid off at the district. And I just want to speak to it from a slightly different angle in that I have experienced Islamophobia, unfortunately, my whole life. And chose to move to Maplewood, South Orange with great intention because it's a welcoming and diverse district. And we do great to every community here, and it's a really wonderful place to be, except I'm always puzzled and shaking my head why we don't have representation for Muslims when it comes to taking off holidays. My relatives in nearby Union have the day off. My teacher friends and cousins in New York City have it off. Private schools have it off. Montclair has it off. Irvington has it off. And the list goes on and on. So it's definitely doable by school calendars. So I do know we are by far not even close to the only Muslim families in town. We welcome Syrian and Afghan refugees. My neighbor is Muslim. We have so many Muslims in this community from so many different backgrounds, whether it's Asian or African American, Middle Eastern is in my case, or North African is in my husband's case. And I just feel like you would be doing right by so many people in this community by letting the Muslim community have a holiday as well, which is Laid. And that is my main ask. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next public speaks is from Natalie Peretti.
Hello.
Hi, good evening. You have 2 minutes.
Hi. Okay, great. Yes, I'm Natalie Peretti from South Orange, and I have 2 kids enrolled in SOMSD. As we know, there basically are 2 different groups of parents in SOMA who keep trying to communicate with the district regarding which COVID protections are needed and which are not. These groups consistently share the same goal: children in school safely. No one wants their kids to have to wear masks to be safe in school. We want school to be safe in order to have our kids in their classrooms. Here we are entering year 3 of this pandemic, and our schools have still not been made safe enough. We have some classrooms with open windows and doors, others without. We have some teachers who know their univents need to be turned on and others who do not. Some schools have nurses advising parents to send positive children to school on days 6 to 10. Other nurses, thankfully, are advising parents to keep positive children home until day 11. Things have spiraled so far out of control during the current surge that classes continue to self-report clusters of 7 or more cases in a single week. Here's what you, as our district leaders, can do to make our schools safe enough. Do everything possible to ensure the district is in full compliance with NJDOH guidance. Students deserve this. Teachers deserve this. This community at large deserves this. Full compliance. Commit to improving transparency and sharing full information with district families about cases and classroom outbreaks in schools. Keep using all the tools we currently have available. These include open windows, open classroom doors, turning on univents, supply and turn on and turn on right-size HEPA filtration devices in all student-occupied spaces, carbon dioxide monitors for assessing ventilation, outdoor lunch, social distancing. Standardize these practices across schools with equity in mind. Consult and coordinate with our district's director of facilities to determine if the schools are in compliance with New Jersey air quality standards. Many school districts have comprehensive indoor air quality plans that we can use as models. There's no need
Thank
to
you.
recreate the
Thank
wheel.
you, Natalie
Thank
Ferretti.
you.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Our next public speaks is from Khadija White. We cannot hear you. We see you, but we cannot hear you.
Can you
that
try
better?
click? Oh, yep, perfect.
I was just saying bedtime. So I just have two quick things.
Thank
One,
you. You have 2 minutes.
thanks. One, I completely support everyone who's saying that we should add Muslim holidays to the calendar. I think that's great. Those are not my two things. One, I wanted to thank you all for recognizing and doing what you can to protect the preschool students and doing for them what you've done for all of the other students in the district, which is waiting until they're vaccinated at the very least before taking away basic mitigation for them in terms of masks. And I just want to point out that my daughter goes to Montrose, and there have not been these kind of wild outbreaks since we've kept outdoor lunches and masks in place. And I really want to encourage that to be done in other spaces. The other thing is, I wanted to express a concern. On Friday, I believe the BOE denied an OPA request from a community member who refused to publicly share the estimated pool costs presented last month by the architects to the small committee of 4 on the finance committee. Besides the fact that it's the community who's going to pay for the destruction of the CHS pool, both in terms of money and in terms of the long-term consequences of water safety and access to swimming, this refusal to share basic information with the community suggests that our input is not only not valuable and that transparency is not important, but it also suggests that you all have something to hide. So one of my questions is, why are you proceeding with secrecy around this issue? If the estimate shows that the cost specifically of repairing the pool is feasible, you should do it. And members Bergen, Wingfield, Siders, Riddler, Tellisford, you all talked about addressing disparities and removing barriers to entry for all kids, especially vulnerable kids in our district, for participation in sports, clubs, and activities. Board President Joshua, you wrote about improving engagement, information flow, and transparency in our district. You guys can do something here for the thousands of kids here. It's an opportunity. It's why you ran. Please, right? Like, please think and please try to reflect and give transparency in this area. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next public speaks is from Kathleen Mitchell.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You have 2 minutes.
My name is Kathleen Mitchell. I'm a Maplewood resident with 2 children in the district. When COVID community transmission is high, as it is right now, New Jersey Department of Health guidance states that, quote, schools should strongly consider universal masking, especially if there is difficulty incorporating other layered prevention strategies. For example, adequate ventilation, adequate spacing of students, end quote. In his message on Friday, Dr. Taylor quoted this language verbatim, except that he omitted the words adequate ventilation. This omission is not surprising given the ventilation issues that continue to plague our schools. In the weeks after spring break, while COVID spread rapidly through our schools, many classrooms had no ventilation at all. It turns out that when the boilers were removed over spring break, the unit vents were shut off and never switched back on. Staff were never informed. During this time, many classrooms had no ventilation, and because there was no heat source and temperatures outside were cold, many teachers kept windows closed. And while most classrooms have air purifiers, it is unlikely they are sufficient on their own to provide adequate ventilation. It is my understanding that most univents have now been turned back on, but only after individual teachers noticed the problem. Some univents may still not be functioning. That this could occur is inexcusable and is made even more so by just how crucial good ventilation is to mitigating the spread of COVID, especially in a mask optional setting. For weeks, our children sat in classrooms with minimal ventilation while COVID cases escalated rapidly and the district did nothing. Last Monday, when alarmed parents pleaded with the district to take action and Dr. Taylor insinuated that families could simply protect themselves by making individual choices, he already knew that the ventilation had been off for weeks, creating a potentially unsafe environment. Even now, ventilation challenges are ongoing, and this will become even more so as the weather heats up, teachers close windows and turn on window air conditioners, which do not introduce any outside air. And so I am urging you to heed the New Jersey Department of Health guidelines and consider the ongoing ventilation limitations in our schools when making COVID mitigation decisions.
Thank you. Your time is up. Our next public speaks is from Devyani Guha.
Hi, do you hear me?
Yes, we do. Good evening. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. So I'm here to speak about the CHS pool today. In 2013, when the BOE voted in favor of repurposing the pool space, they intended for it to be used as classrooms. Today, there's a plan to spend $3.55 million for a space that lacks any instructional element and is of limited, if any, use to the students. $3.55 million for window dressing. A space for students to hang out in a school where they are supervised for little things, even for lunch. Who will supervise them? When will they hang out? How will the privacy be maintained in glass-walled guidance counseling offices? I have CHS 17 and CHS 20 grads. When they go back to school, they visit their teachers. They do not go there to hang out in an empty alumni hall. To suggest that science labs can be located in this space is just funny, as the space lacks necessary ventilation. This new design is neither a need nor a want. So why is the BOE so committed to this plan? Why is access and equity related to swimming that the district provided for nearly 100 years not as important? At the last BOE meeting, it was announced that the district's architect had given estimates for this fantastical space, as well as for pool restoration. While the overall numbers were shared, the breakdown of the estimates were not shared with the public. Oprah request for the detailed estimate was denied by the district. What is the district trying to hide? Could it be that the numbers don't actually tell the story that is being told to the public? I urge the board to be transparent and release these numbers to the public. As elected officials, this is your responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public speaks is from Emily Konopinski.
Hello, Emily. Can you hear us?
I think that's the wrong Emily.
So then I do not see another person with that first name or last name.
Okay, thanks. Our next public speaks is from Julie Kelman.
I do not see that community member.
Our next public speaks is from Bari Dunphy.
Can you hear me?
Hi, good evening. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you. My name is Barry Dunphy. I'm a Maplewood resident, working mom, and proud and exhausted parent of 2 children in pre-K, one who has an IEP for speech delay and sensory issues. I cannot begin to tell you how difficult it's been for my daughter to receive services with a mask on this entire year. I'm here with the firm ask that the preschool parents are offered the same rights as K through 12 parents in having the choice to mask our children. Dr. Taylor, our preschool friends and neighbors have sent countless emails citing data, the CDC, New Jersey Department of Health, and examples of preschools outside of SOMA and within SOMA that have moved to mask optional to no real response. When the numbers are low, medium, or high, we receive the same cookie cutter email templates, and we expect better. Dr. Taylor, where are the pre-K results that we took weeks ago? Those results have not been shared for either two reasons. One, pre-K is not a priority in this district. The K through 12 survey was sent out and the results were delivered in a timely fashion. Two, the results show that parents want or respect pre-K parents to have a choice, and that goes against what Candace Davenport and you have stood behind for the past year. If the sole argument is to mask preschool children in this district is based on vaccination status, this argument is weak and flawed. In theory, an unvaccinated kindergarten student can attend school without a mask, but her unvaccinated preschool sibling cannot. Our district does not mandate masks for unvaccinated children over the age of 5, and we do not have 100% vaccination compliance. If we ever get a vaccine for under 5, we have no proof that parents will all jump to vaccinate the under 5 population. And again, it is not mandated. Children who have been vaccinated and boosted are getting COVID. The variants are ever changing, and the solution for pre-K cannot be permanent masks, quarantines, and virtual school. The last email from you guys stated, based on the information we've provided, we're leaving it at the discretion of parents, staff to determine the best decision for themselves and their families. Dr. Taylor, does this district not think the same for pre-K parents? At the May 9th BOE meeting, you stated we cannot COVID-proof our schools. We agree, we cannot COVID-proof our preschools. We have a firm ask to remove the mask mandate immediately. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next public speaks is from Brian Dunphy.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You have 2 minutes.
All right, great. My name is Brian Dunphy. I'm going to be finishing what my wife started. For those who are still don't know about the public pre-K, how it operates, children actually take off their masks a minimum of 3 times a day for extended periods of time, indoors in the same room for snack, lunch, rest, and nap time. These children are exposed to each other and have gotten cold, coxsackie, fever, viruses, and yes, COVID. Masks were supposed to be a stopgap measure and not a permanent solution for all, yet it continues for under 5 with no end in sight. The policy for a pre-K exposure is quarantining in virtual school. Closing classrooms and virtual learning should no longer be the go-to for exposures. Both are terrible ideas for pre-K. We now know that virtual schools have made a devastating impact on our children, as many articles citing that data. What will it take for you to realize that mandating masks with no end date will have severe negative impacts on our youngest population? Are we waiting for the New York Times to put it on the front page for something to be done? Sadly, COVID is not going away, and it's time for us to learn how to function, not live in fear, but live with this. Our #1 priority should be keeping children in school, deal with the waves appropriately because there will be more. The time is now. Please focus your efforts on better communication with our community over COVID, efficient test to stay policies for all children, and learn how to deal with these waves and keep our preschool kids in school. Trust that as parents of preschool children, we know what is best for our children. We have a firm ask to remove the mask mandate immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public speaks is from Gina Priotiazza.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You have 2 minutes.
My name is Gina Priotassa. I live in South Orange and I'm a mother of 3 children in the district. I want to share my recent experience with my preschooler and the district COVID policies. Last week, my son had to quarantine from a close contact and missed 3 days of school. Today, on his first day back, he was asked to leave school because he coughed. He has mild seasonal allergies and has a mild runny nose, which causes him to cough sometimes because he can't blow his nose, something few toddlers can do. The fact that my son doesn't have COVID is not relevant. The current policy states that he may be asked to go home if he exhibits any one of several vague symptoms that may or may not be related to COVID. Being COVID negative is currently not a driving factor in our pre-K district policy. If my son happens to have a mild symptom caused from just about anything, he may be asked to leave school, disrupting his learning and development, our work, and our general family life. The current pre-K district policy is out of step with the realities of where we are today with COVID, and in not helping to achieve the ultimate goal of keeping students in person, in school, and in an environment that is optimal for learning. In fact, the policies around COVID are posing more risks to toddlers and their families than the actual disease. The level of anxiety we're all feeling is extremely high, toddlers included. My son is being taught to be fearful of any kind of symptoms. His schedule can change at any moment, and he doesn't have the comfort of predictability and the nurture of social interaction, not to mention he doesn't see his friends or teachers' faces. For parents, we are in constant high alert. What if my child has any minor symptom? How will our lives be uprooted next? What is all this for? Is quarantining toddlers without COVID, ripping toddlers out of school for any minor symptom, forcing toddlers to mask indefinitely in school when no one else in the town, county, or state have to, and counting cases, somehow stopping the spread of COVID or saving lives? Deaths and COVID cases are no longer correlated. Maybe we're just trying to be compliant, but there are almost no preschools in our area with the same type of pre-K policy. I know
Thank
there are
you. Your
people
time
who
is
heard
up. Our next public speaks is from Rebecca Hollander.
I do not see that community member.
Our next public speaks is from Maya Ziobro.
Yes, hi.
Hi, good evening. You have 2 minutes.
I have 3 children in the district, and I'm calling in support of math choice for our preschoolers. My youngest child is in pre-K at Zadie's, a wonderful childcare center in East Orange that has a mix of East Orange and South Orange, Maplewood Public, and private childcare classrooms. There are now only 2 classrooms in the entire center where masks are required, and those are, of course, the 2 South Orange Maplewood classes. You claim this continued mandate is a directive from the New Jersey Department of Health, but if that is so, how is it that most neighboring districts, including the classes literally down the hall from my daughter's class, and so many private preschools in our own community, how is it that they've been able to lift this mask mandate for pre-K? I'm also a preschool teacher myself, and I can tell you that at this age, a child's ability to mask well is highly individualized. Many young children have speech or sensory issues that make masking problematic, and most children, in fact, remove, chew, and touch the mask throughout the day, rendering them ineffective. This is also a time of rapid growth in speech and social emotional learning through seeing full faces and expressions, of course. And this is why the World Health Organization has never, under any circumstances, recommended mask mandates for children under 6. The decision to mask a child this young also depends on each family's circumstances and experience. For instance, my own daughter had COVID already this year, which she caught while wearing a mask around other masked people, as many others did in the winter of this year. So she now asks to be able to go to school normally, just like her older brothers do. And it seems absurd that I have to force her to wear a mask every day. That didn't work the first time, when she now poses little threat to others given her recent immunity. And even with masks, these children are still being quarantined with every COVID exposure and small sniffle, and it's complete chaos for families of young kids, as previous speakers have shown. So all we want is a choice, and we want your trust in us to make these choices for our kids, no matter what.
Thank you. The time is up. Our next public speaks is from Pete Paschal.
On Friday's email and a few of the earlier comments tonight, there's some growing concern about the rise in COVID cases within the district. This is understandable, and as we've heard, a few people are even pointing to the reinstatement of a mask mandate as the appropriate response. This is misguided, and I'll explain why. Now, I'm not going to rehash arguments about why mask mandates are or aren't an effective mitigation strategy. I really don't think that's productive at this point. Instead, I'd rather focus on exactly what we think we're mitigating anymore. In every single case of someone getting COVID that I've heard in this latest wave, the symptoms were mild to non-existent, and 100% of the people recovered completely. And that holds for everyone I've spoken to as well. Now, that is admittedly anecdotal, but the data agrees. If you look at the stats, and they're available on the New York Times website for anyone to look at, you'll see that the daily average for cases in Essex County has quadrupled over the last 2 months. Daily deaths aren't just flat in the same period, they've gone down. Now, that's a lagging indicator, but it's not that lagging. So really, in other words, for healthy people, and especially children, COVID really never posed much risk, but now that risk is basically negligible. So for the vulnerable, in addition to vaccines, N95 and KN95 masks are widely available today, and they're cheap. In addition to all of that, the drug Paxlovid, which has been shown to reduce the chance of a severe outcome from COVID by as much as 90%, is also widely available. So I ask again, what are we mitigating? COVID in 2022 is completely different from COVID in 2020 and even 2021. We know how it spreads, we know who's vulnerable, and we know how to treat it and defend against it. It's time we recognize that broad, blunt force tools like lockdowns, virtual instruction, and yes, mask mandates are extreme measures and should only be applied in extreme circumstances. And given the picture today, a rise in cases shouldn't count as extreme. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public speaks is from Jessica Krishnappa.
I do not see that community member.
Our next public speaks is from Kate Walker.
Hi, my name is Kate Walker. I live in South Orange with 2 children currently in the district and another entering shortly. Thank you for sharing the recent COVID dashboard data with the community. The data is interesting to explore, especially as it relates to mask mandates. It is assumed that a mask mandate is in place to limit the spread of COVID among the individuals within a particular space. Specifically, the current pre-K mask mandate is intended to limit the spread of COVID among pre-K students. However, when you look at the data reported by the district, the numbers show an even distribution of COVID levels among the pre-K student population and the K-12 student population at a rate of 16 to 24% throughout the district this school year. We see this to be true in the district pre-K classrooms as well as all other schools. For example, Montrose, Clinton, and Tuscan have a 24% rate of COVID. Apple Core and Seth Boyden have a 21%. Zades and Columbia have 17%. We have had a mask optional policy for K-12 students for over 2 months, while the pre-K mask mandate has remained in place. So shouldn't we see a lower rate of COVID among pre-K students because they're all wearing their masks? The data does not show a lower level of COVID in the pre-K student population. Why is this the case? It's because the assumption that COVID spreads in schools and in schools alone is an inaccurate assumption. COVID spreads everywhere. If COVID spreads everywhere and the current pre-K mask mandate is not helping to mitigate the spread in that population, then why do we currently have a pre-K mask mandate? This district needs to focus on the overall health of our children and not the myopic COVID case count metric. We need to stop cherry picking which guidance we'll follow and which we won't. You, Dr. Taylor, need to lead our community away from the fear of COVID and create a sense of childhood normalcy that these 3 and 4-year-olds have never known. We know that you hear from parents across the board on this issue, but you can't make political decisions to appease everyone. That's not your job. You need to make decisions that prioritize our students' whole health. That is your job. We all know that adolescent mental health is in a crisis right now. Let's correct course now before we have a
Thank
crisis
you. Your
amongst the
time
next
is
group
up.
of students.
Thank you. Our next public speaks is from Leontine Harry.
I do not see that community member.
Our next public speaks is from Karen Harris.
Looks like they may have disconnected.
Our next public speaks is from Shannon Cuddle. Hey, Mr. Bonds, we have an extra panelist right now.
Hi.
Hi, good evening. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. Hold on. I'm starting my timer because I don't see the timer. Okay. First, good evening, everyone. It's good to see everyone this evening. I just wanted to thank the board in advance of considering the resolution tonight in regards to looking out for fines and fees for students for this graduating year. I feel like it's a little bit like Groundhog Day. When I was on the board, we handled fines and fees and we talked about supporting students. And before that, I was on the board. I was one of the co-founders of Cougar Care. Handled fines and fees. There are challenges that are impacting students with returning books and materials, especially during the COVID pandemic. It's not just one or two individuals, it's students in the elementary and larger high school and middle school grades that I'm hearing from that are experiencing challenges right now. I'm glad to see that we're doing a resolution to allow students to have a reprieve from that so they can attend all and not be reprimanded from student events. Aside from that, I just really also wanted to say thank you for also passing the resolution last month to continuing the summer food service program. I know that hasn't had a lot of opportunity to air, but summer food service is so important. As we know, that was something that I was very proud of, and that we're continuing that. And I look forward to the district being able to promote that this summer. I think it's even critical right now during COVID. And lastly, I just wanted to be able to acknowledge and a formal invitation to the board members and the community as a reminder that Lavender graduation this year will be happening on June 10th. And there'll be more information coming out from the district. Again, this is a culminating event for LGBT students and allies, and it's just really important event in partnership with the Township of Maplewood, the Village of South Orange, and our school district partners. And thank you for that, Dr. Taylor, Principal Sanchez, and our Spectrum Student Club.
Thank you. Our next public speaks is from Bert Morris.
I think I'm unmuted now. You can hear me?
Yes, we can. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Bert Marsh from Maplewood. I don't have any children, so I don't have anybody there with the school system, but I just want to speak in support of repairing the pool at the high school. I think that's a very important thing, and I just request that members, that all you on the Board of Education really be transparent about the true costs of, like, if we repair the pool, if we use it for other purposes. I just think that it's such a vital thing. And it's one, like, I don't think there's that many high schools in New Jersey. I don't know how many that have pools, and the fact that Columbia High School has one, I think it's something to be treasured, and we should look all avenues possible to repairing the pool. I just think it's that important. And thank you very much, and I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Our next public speak is from Lisa Kearney.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. My name is Lisa Carney, and I live in Maplewood. I wanted to add my support and to thank the board and the superintendent for continuing the mask mandate in our preschool. I have two daughters in Clinton School, and masks were reinstated too late after a terrible outbreak. And in fact, the mask mandate ended today, back to optional. I personally would like the district to reinstate masks for all students, considering the high spread currently in our towns and Essex County. This is an easy thing that we can do to protect each other. I have a vaccinated 5-year-old preschooler at the YMCA, and I believe we have even more of a responsibility to protect the kids in her class that cannot be vaccinated. And also, the YMCA absolutely has comparable COVID protocols in place for their preschool kids, and I am grateful for their care. How selfish and disappointing it is to listen to the anti-maskers push to remove the one mitigation tool we're currently utilizing and willfully and recklessly expose unvaccinated kids to the virus. We need to continue to do everything we can to keep these kids safe. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Mr. Bonds, I'm going to go back up to the top, catch some people that we missed or weren't able to participate, and see if there's another opportunity before we close this out. So we'll go back to Brandon Jones.
I don't see that community member.
Allison Weiss.
Same thing.
Emily Konopinski.
Same.
Julie Kelman.
Same.
Rebecca Hollander.
Same.
Jessica Krishnappa.
No.
Leontine Harry.
I don't see that name.
And Karen Harris.
I do see that person.
Oh, trying to, woo, I made it. Hi, everyone.
Good evening. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, I'm here to talk tonight about water safety and swimming instruction in our PE curriculum as a critical life skill that's made achievable through our publicly available but endangered resource, our pool. I have 2 children who have gone through the district, each able to swim, benefiting from the CHS pool. Their story began when we moved here in 2001, and my first child attended swimming lessons at the CHS pool through the Y. As a CHS student, she lifeguarded the PE swim classes where she watched her peers grow empowered as they learned to swim. It was a really amazing thing for her to experience, to see them learn. And again, not just learn, but feel that empowerment. I myself identify as a first generation swim able person. My parents, less privileged, never learned to swim. My husband, also less privileged, never learned to swim. I ask all of you, please reflect on your own personal journey to achieve this critical life skill. And if you are not able to swim, it is even more important to share your story, so it will not be one that is repeated. Our district is considering end of life for our high school pool, which is a focal point of many stories of empowerment. Repairing the pool is a viable option. Please note that this decision is on your watch. Is water safety and empowerment through swimming skills a story everyone in our community deserves to tell? Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our first public speaks. Dr. Taylor, care to respond?
Yeah, I will. My earbuds went dead. How do I sound? Do I sound okay? Okay, great. For those who don't normally attend these meetings, our team and I, we do take copious notes of all the public speaks. And although the New Jersey School Board Association and others advise against trying to give an immediate response, we understand how important these issues are, and we try to offer an immediate response if we have the information available. So I'm going to go down my list here. There are some pretty specific things said that I want to make sure that I respond to so we can leave that information. There's obvious disagreement, right? Even within our public speaks, there's very strong feelings around masking students in general. The letter that we sent out on Friday, part of the purpose of that is to just share where we are in response to our current COVID information, to share where we are regarding where we are as a county, where we are as a state, understanding where we are, with regard to our own Department of Health, as well as the state Department of Health. So just going down my list here, some specific things that were said that I want to respond to. There was a comment around pediatrician who gave different advice saying that home tests are okay. And I don't think that we have ever disagreed with that during this latest update of information. We're saying that if you have a home test that's positive, as it says in our letter that went out Friday, it initiates all the COVID virtual learning pieces for your child. But we also stated that we cannot use that as information that has not been verified for such an important method as our data dashboard. The data dashboard, we as a district are telling you these are confirmed cases. When there are home tests being done, we don't have that information. We don't know who's doing it. We don't have confirmation of how long the test sat. Were the directions followed? There's so many things that can happen that make that information not reliable to us to use as our official COVID count. Will that activate virtual learning for a family? Sure it will. And I think that's what's most important, to make sure that we're keeping kids learning, even in a virtual setting, if they have a home test. But to consistently keep up, think about 7,000 students all taking home tests at the same time. Who's managing and verifying all of those submissions that come into a school? The school nurse is taking care of the kids who are present. And so we have to think about managing and the capacity for us to do so in a way that that meets our standards of maintaining information. There were a few questions about air quality, so I want to make sure that we're very specific on the responses for that. We do have an air quality consultant who works with our facilities director, and we activate those folks all the time throughout every school year. But for those who may not have been with us, because there was a comment made around we haven't made any improvements since pre-COVID, and it's just simply not true. We received lots of Oprah requests around the money that we spent to improve our facilities, to improve our univents that were inoperable pre-COVID, some of them, because that's why we approved the $165 million bond to fix these broken HVAC units. Because of the emergence of COVID, we spent thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars with our HVAC consultant to repair those univents that someone hadn't worked in years, because we knew the ventilation was important. Secondly, we added purifiers to all the spaces in our school district. You see them if you talk to our teachers, they have those units in their classrooms, in our main office, et cetera. We also invested significantly in Odorox machines for our larger spaces. And these Odorox machines are heavy duty and they're very expensive, and they clean the air in our schools, in our bathrooms, in our larger auditoriums, et cetera. So just to give you those three layers of expenses that the district has taken on strategically to improve the ventilation in our building. The question around unit ventilators being turned off or turned on, and I gave the order to turn them off or turn them on. To be very specific around that, in order for us to get our HVAC units modernized through our construction projects, we have to remove the boilers from our schools. And we did that during spring break. And we gave the parents and teachers of those schools a lot of notification that that was going to happen, because that had to happen for us to put the new HVAC units in our buildings this summer. That work can't be done while students are in schools. And I received a question from a parent saying, why did I turn off the univents? And that if we knew that univents would have to be turned off for boilers to be removed, then we shouldn't have done that. And just to be very clear, what a boiler does is heat up water and steam and push it through a system. What a univent does is capture the heat from those systems and also bring in fresh air from outside. So you don't, by taking out a boiler, you're not taking out a univent. I know this is a lot. I know too much about this stuff. I apologize to keep going on, but it's just so important that we leave with the same information. And secondly, can univents be turned on or off? Some of them can. I've seen them myself because they've been here so long. They've been fixed many times, and they have switches in them. We also, of course, have paced our removal of our univents, because we are removing and replacing them with brand new things, to only do that in rooms where we do have windows, and also we have the ancillary air cleaning devices. Sorry to go off on that tangent, but I just think it's just really important for everyone to know. And to those who wrote in thoughtfully around the recognition of Muslim holidays, I have responded to those emails that I have received. And what we try to focus in on our calendars are, we have multiple calendars. One calendar is our number of days of school calendar, right? Where we are counting that 180 days of school for our kids. We're making sure that we are timing the spring breaks and all those type of things, that teachers know what to do if there's a inclement weather day, all those kinds of things. It doesn't reflect every holiday that we as a community appreciate, but I definitely acknowledge the receipt of those concerns and the appearance of inequity, which is concerning to me. So we're going to work with our team. I know that our CNI team is always working with our communications folks on pushing out those recognitions, reminding teachers of our policy on pending holidays and homework, and that is representative of our beliefs. So I'll make sure that we follow up on that. The design of our calendar, for those who, of our academic calendar, for those who are familiar with it, we don't, if you look on there, there's not a whole lot of holiday recognition on there. There are breaks that are acknowledged. But I would love to see and ask any of those folks who spoke to us, please share calendars from other districts that you think represent that recognition. We'd be more than happy to look at that. Those who wrote in about and spoke about the pools and the future of the pool, I'm sure, as I've said on our emails, the Board of Education, respects the previous actions of boards, and they're also thoughtfully taking into consideration all the sides of that decision and how it can impact our greater long-range facilities plan and the statewide approval and all those pieces. One specific comment around stated something like, I know my kid didn't catch COVID here or there, or with a mask or without a mask. What I want to just share is that we are making rules based on recommendations. We are making policies based on recommendations. And as the person said in their comment, I've never stated that we could COVID-proof our schools. We're not a hospital, right? We do our best practices. We do all we can to reasonably protect folks. And we pull this from the guidance that we receive from our state and local authorities, and we do our best to make the best decisions for all, even though we know that we're not going to always agree on those decisions. So I'm just going to my last page here. Thank you, former board member Cuddle, for acknowledging the board's thoughtful work around fines and fees and waiving them as a standard practice for students who have done nothing to personally be responsible for that, right? They're under 18. Those fines, those fees are adult issues. That doesn't mean that the district isn't interested in having rules and regulations and being efficient, but we don't want to punish students for adult challenges. So thank you for acknowledging that. And thank you for announcing the Lavender graduation. We are excited again to be planning and participating in it. Those are all of my responses.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. We'll now move on to our committee reports. We will go in alphabetical order by committee. So we will start with C&I, and then finance, personnel, and then policy. So board member Siders, we'll start with you.
Hello. The C&I committee met on Tuesday, May 3rd. The attendees were board member Wingfield, board member Malaspina, and board president Joshua filling in for board member Telsford. We had Ms. Hart and Ms. Costello present during our meeting. They are the instructional coaches that started around February of this year. They're instructional coaches for the elementary schools. And they provided an overview of what their, I believe it was their 59 first days have been like. Let's see. They mentioned that teachers have been requesting coaching services via a Google Doc questionnaire. Ms. Costello and Ms. Hart are digitally certified in the district purchase software like Seesaw, Freckle, PlayPosit, so they're able to offer some support for teachers who are not familiar with those software offerings. They are part of our INRS team, so that's our intervention and referral services team. They're developing summer PD and trying to provide a flexible schedule so that teachers can take advantage of that. And like I said, they're in their first 59 days of being our instructional coaches, and they already had a wait list. We are also looking to hire instructional coaches at the secondary level, and I believe the jobs were posted maybe 2 Mondays ago. Let's see. We also had Mr. and Ms. Bahudin come in and give us some updates on the risk ratio item, which he also presented, I think was at the February board meeting. He's added some attendance data to that risk ratio tool that he developed. He's going to be adding state testing data and discipline data as well. And he just gave some next step recommendations about what we're going to do next with that tool. Let's see. Up on our agenda today, we have approvals for field trips and also for summer school fees. For special services, on April 20th, there was a CPAC meeting that was called What Now? It was a workshop for transitioning beyond high school. It was presented by Mr. Enlick. It was well attended. I believe about 85 people attended that, much more than in previous years. It gave a breakdown of what high school looks like. It included information about what documentation is needed, how to seek supports, the level of responsibility a student will hold. And also, Mr. Enlick sent out some resources of what schools specialize in different areas. All right. Just picking through. For extended school year, ESY, this year it will be running for an additional hour. And during that additional hour, we'll be focusing on learning loss for the students who attend ESY. We also did have just a brief conversation about, I think it was board member Malaspina who brought up, how can we make our calendars more inclusive, which is similar to what two speakers addressed tonight. And, taking a look at that and possibly taking a look at also what our neighboring districts are doing. I think someone brought up, what is Newark doing? What is Irvington doing? So more to come on that. We also have one more thing. We have a few policies up for second read. I believe it's student surveys, analysis and evaluations, prevention and treatment of sports-related concussions and head injuries, and anti-hazing. And those are up for second read tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Board Member Siders? Board Member Malspina.
We never we said we were going to look into the inclusive calendars, but we haven't really come up with a plan moving forward. I'd like us to move forward with that. So I don't know if we want to
Take
discuss
that. Let me take that, Board Member Sider. So, as you know, Board Member Malspina, you reached out, and the next step was to contact Executive Committee, and we would work with the Superintendent. You did so, and then we sent. We did some research that we've shared with you, and that we're actually meeting this week to discuss to go over that research and then work with Dr. Taylor on how we could and what could be possible. In short, some of the districts that do observe Eid do not observe some of the Jewish holidays. And as I brought up, there are also, we don't also observe Lunar New Year. So there's opportunities to be inclusive and just trying to figure out what makes sense while still meeting 180 days, plus building in inclement weather days and accounting for our ongoing construction. So those are the next steps.
Great. I look forward to us moving forward and getting a report back to the community soon on this. Thank you.
Any other questions for Board Member Siders? Thank you. Over to Board Member Valamani.
So we had our Finance, Facilities and Technology Committee meeting on the 11th of May. It was attended by all 4 committee members. That's Board Member Whitler, Board President Joshua, and Board Member Wright, along with me. And one of the first things we discussed was we got the construction updates and the number of change orders that were happening. So there were many changes that were made over the spring break because some of them cannot be done during school hours. So, obviously they replaced gas meters, some spray foam, door replacement, electric breakers, and also ongoing work towards summer when there's going to be asbestos abatement and various other things. President Joshua offered to have a special meeting if we need to get together to approve a few things faster because we're right now in the middle of a construction period right now. We approved the budget for the summer school fees approvals. Bids were put out for lease purchase of Chromebooks, including fiber card systems, which have already been approved before. Annual contract renewals are coming up. For example, pest management, fire alarm service, because the fiscal year is from July 1 to June 30th. So, and actually, I think we'll be voting on a bunch of them tonight. Application was also made for a safety grant for about 45,000, which would probably previously has been used for security cameras, etc. We had some discussion some requests came from the town about trying to help out with the traffic situation around Seth Boyden. We're waiting for more information from them, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion over that over the next few meetings. We also spoke about the softball field update, where the Underhill field is probably the best place to put the softball field because it follows the spirit of Title IX, and also that the space works out really well for a varsity team. We worked on the mission statement. It went back and forth, so we finally are going to be releasing the mission statement today. Many of the board members wanted to have some school building tours so that the way they can get a feel for what is being built and what is being, what they are actually being asked to vote on. So there's some discussion of putting that into the calendar. Board members had a bunch of questions. Some of the questions were on the water fountains at Tuscan, where they've all been turned on now. They were turned off for COVID, but they are all operational as of now. There was a bunch of questions on transportation and looking at how many people we were looking for more data on how many children are less than 2 miles away or very close to the 2 mile threshold. And we're looking forward to getting some more data and discussing that. We also talked about security guards, descriptions, the outsourced security professionals, and the job descriptions. And we are also going to have a resolution tonight for the paraprofessionals contract. That's pretty much what's happening at FFT.
Thank you. Questions for Board Member Valamani. Board Member Malsmia.
Did you ever get the job descriptions or the contract for the security companies? Because I had asked for it for a while and still haven't received it.
This is the first time we heard about it. Let me answer the question if you don't mind. We just got the question the first time. I don't recall having seen this question before. But regardless, I mean, we talked about it, and there are two pieces of information that will come back from the administration. One is the contract that we had with them, and then also the links to what they offer on the website. Because I don't think there is any more information on a security guard per security guard basis. So that's where we are.
So we were. So
Let's let Dr. Taylor respond, please. Thank you.
Go ahead, Dr. Taylor.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say that part of what I recall from our conversation, because folks who were on the board early in the fall received a document from me that reflected on expectations for security guards, especially in dealing with younger students. And so we reproduced that document and put it in your most recent Friday packet. Mr. Burnside shared with me the job description piece from the vendor, and it'll be coming in your next Friday packet. This was just today.
Thank you.
All right, over to Board Member Wakefield for personnel.
All right, the Personnel Committee met on May 5th for around 2 hours, and we spent time reviewing our regular monthly personnel resolutions, one of which we'll be voting on tonight. But the bulk of our meeting this month was to review recommendations for renewal and non-renewals. We had 7 recommendations for non-renewals, which were presented to the committee. Each of the non-renewals was individually discussed. Detailed reasons for the non-renewals were shared. The committee weighed concerns of meaningful and direct feedback. There were some questions about some of the summative and observation scores and the components considered in determining the scores. There were a few areas absent of information, and we questioned and asked the district to follow up in advance of our executive meeting last week. And there were also some questions about the effect of leaves of absence on tenure. Dr. Taylor and Ms. Robinson explained to us that unpaid leave of absences were excluded from eligibility years that would contribute towards the achievement of tenure. In addition to discussing renewals and non-renewals, we spent time discussing some job descriptions. So one, which was old business, was a review of the job description for the position of maintenance worker. There were some concerns about the number of qualifications listed. And so Ms. Robinson did some digging and compared our job description with neighboring districts. It was found to be aligned with and pretty standardized across what we found in other districts, or what she found rather. And there were no significant changes recommended to the role and requirements. Therefore, the committee members approved the job description. In newer business, we discussed a number of additional job descriptions. One was the K-8 language arts supports teacher. This is a position that falls under SOMEA. The position was created to replace a vacancy filled by a retiring staff member who provided support to other educators. We reviewed a position, a supervisor of athletics. This would be a full-time position. This selected candidate would handle all matters concerning sports programs and extracurricular activities. We reviewed the job description for the supervisor of health and physical education and nursing, K-12. This job description was updated to include reporting to and evaluation duties. And then finally, our Beyond the Bell administrative liaison. This is an administrative stipend position established to support our district's Beyond the Bell program. Finally, we discussed an idea, I believe it was brought up by board member Whitletter, around the potential of hosting a 10-year celebration. We thought that it would be a nice idea, and she suggested having a congratulatory celebration for the upcoming year's tenure appointments, something that just recognizes staff either in an end of year or beginning of the year assembly. And so we're going to review options and discuss in some of our further committee meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Board Member Wakefield? All right, I will take policy. And the policy committee met on May 10th for about 2 hours, and Board Member Siders filled in for Board Member Telsford. Tonight, we are voting on 8 policies. 2415.05, student surveys, analysis, or evaluations. This policy requires consent from parents, guardians, and emancipated students for the student to participate in surveys, testing, and evaluations from programs funded by the Department of Education. It also gives parents, guardians, and emancipated students the right to inspect instructional materials and review surveys. Policy also prohibits students from being required to disclose certain information, such as religious or political affiliation, mental health, sexual behavior, illegal behavior, and income. Policy 2431.4, prevention and treatment of sports-related concussions and head injuries. This policy requires the district to adopt an athletic head injury safety training program and distribute information on head injuries to parents. Student athletes who are suspected of having a head injury are removed from competition or practice and cannot participate until medically clear. The district must also share the policy with all youth sports team organizations that use school facilities. Policy 3134, assignment of additional duties. This policy addresses when the superintendent may assign additional duties to teaching staff members and is being updated based on Strauss-Esme recommendations. Policy 5124, internal student transfers. This policy is being updated to reflect our growing integration program. It is also being corrected regarding how students who move within the district may stay at their current school by requesting a transfer so they are not reassigned. Policy 5541, anti-hazing, is a new mandatory policy regarding hazing that was discussed at the special C&I committee meeting in April. The policy committee selected the option that this policy applies to all schools in the district rather than only the secondary schools. Board members, staff, and contractors must report alleged hazing on the same day as it was observed to the principal. Policy 8830, patriotic observances. This policy was passed in 2001. It is being abolished because it's not in the Strauss-Esme policy manual. Nearby districts do not have this policy, and it does not reflect current state holidays. Abolishing policy 8830 will not prevent the district from raising and lowering the flag, and will not affect saluting the flag in classrooms, which is covered by 8820. Policy 8465, bias crimes and bias-related acts. This is a mandatory policy being revised to reflect updates from Strauss-Esme. It defines bias crime and bias-based acts. Both bias crimes and bias-based acts must be reported to the superintendent and then local law enforcement. The district must preserve evidence such as graffiti pending arrival of law enforcement. Since last month, we added a sentence that bias crimes and bias-related acts will be referred for evaluation under the HIB policy. And lastly, first I can read this evening is policy 9713, recruitment for special interests. This policy addresses recruiting of high school students by military recruiters, institutions of higher education, and prospective employers. Parents, guardians have the ability to opt their students out. The district is required to give the military the same access to students as it gives to institutions of higher education. We have 3 policies up for first read this evening. 1648.15, record keeping for healthcare safe settings in school buildings, COVID-19. This policy addresses record keeping related to employees who test positive for COVID. It is to comply with OSHA and has limited applicability in schools. It applies only to employees working in the school nurse's office and any adjoining clinical areas in the school building. 9400, news media relations. This policy is being updated based on Strauss Esfay. It addresses who can speak with the media on behalf of the district and the confidentiality obligations of staff speaking publicly as individuals. 9410, broadcast media relations. This policy, which was last passed in 2001, is being abolished. It is not a Strauss Esfay policy and is largely covered by policy 9400, but could be incorporated into the regulations for policy 9400. The Policy Committee also discussed 9720, solicitations by vendors. It is a Strauss Esfay policy that addresses vendors soliciting students, parents, and guardians. Vendors must be approved by the board, and the board can withdraw approval at any time. The policy sent this committee to the Finance Committee for review and expected for first read next month. Policy Committee also discussed Resolution 4305. Board Member Bergen drafted the resolution because there was not enough time to revise the relevant policy before prom, given the need for 2 reads. Historically, students whose district records show owed money to the district were not permitted to attend prom and some other activities. The resolution directs the district to permit students to attend and participate in school events, regardless of whether district records show that the student owes money to the district. The resolution also directs the district to provide transcripts to students and graduates, regardless of money owed to the district. Note that the resolution does not forgive the money owed. It merely does not exclude students based on their debt. Policy Committee discussed possible revisions to 5513, care of school property, to align it with the resolution. Policy 5513 will be sent to the C&I Committee before it comes for first read. The Policy Committee also discussed 0164, conduct of board meetings, and whether to suggest any changes to the presentation section. The committee started the conversation and did not come to a consensus. The Policy Committee also discussed its mission statement at its March meeting. The mission statement included goals for creating processes to help the board stay on top of its policies. And that is the Policy Committee readout. Any questions? All right, that concludes the discussion. That concludes our committee reports. We're now going to move. Board Member Malspina.
I just want to make it clear because people seem to be confused about the policy related to the flags. This policy is actually making it so that by abolishing this policy, we're actually doing more. We're not like doing less. Some people were getting confused by that. The flags go up every day. They come down every day. We observe all the holidays. The policy that is in place right now says it only needs to be up on certain holidays. We actually do more than that. So I don't want people to think in any way, shape, or form that we are not, patriotic in any way. We are actually making it so that it is up every day.
Thank you for that. I just wanted to, I did include that in my presence report because I just wanted it to be clear, and it was also included in the Policy Committee readout just for double, triple clarity purposes. So I appreciate that. Thank you. We're going to now move on to the action portion of the meeting, but I do so before I do that, I do want to recognize that and Ms. Butler, I believe it is Resolution 4303 will be removing 229992. These are case numbers. Case number 229992 and case number 228526. Is that correct?
I'm pulling my report back up.
Okay.
229992 and 228526.
Okay, so I'm going to bring them forward, and I'll just make that notation as I bring them forward. Okay, I'm going to make a motion to bring forth for discussion and action resolutions 4297 through 4305, as well as 4307, with the following, excluding the following: 4300K, 4304D, 4303, with the removals of case numbers 229992 and 228526. Board Member Malspina, do you have another one? You're muted.
I think you got the security one, which is the one that we wanted.
Yes, I have the notes. Thank you. Okay, so just those. So can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? All right, that appears to be unanimous, Mr. Burnside. We're now in discussion for resolutions 4297 through 4305, as well as 4307, with the following exclusions of 4300K and 4304D. Before we start, I just want to ask everyone for a moment of silence in honor of, in terms for 4297A, we have a memorial. I'm gonna get the name. I don't want to mess the name up, so pardon me. So I'm gonna ask for a moment of silence memorial for 4297A for retired CHS Secretary Carolyn Stickle, who passed away, and also for former staff member Jay Gavitt. Thank you. We're now in discussion for the previously mentioned items. Board Member Malspina, is that a old hand?
It is an old hand. And there is one I can't participate in, right?
I took care of that as well.
You're the best.
I'm trying. Thank you, and I appreciate it. All right, seeing none, I'll close discussion. Mr. Burnside, can you please call the roll for items 4297 through 4305, with the exceptions of 4300K, 4304D, and also include 4307.
Board President Joshua.
Yes.
Board Member Malaspina.
Yes.
Board Member Siders.
Yes.
Board Member Vadlamani.
Yes.
Board Member Wingfield.
Yes.
Board Member Whitletter.
Yes.
Board Member Wright.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. I'd now like to move resolutions 4300K and 4304D for discussion. May I have a second?
Aye.
Second.
Thank you, Board Member Malspina. All in favor?
Aye.
That appears to be unanimous, Mr. Burnside. We're now in discussion for the above mentioned items.
I think.
Is that an old hand, Board Member Malspina? It is.
It is, but it's related to 4300K, I think it is.
Yes.
Yes, the security contracts. I have concerns about the fact that this really didn't go through committee properly, and that there wasn't a chance given for us to see the contract or the job descriptions prior to voting on it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Board Member Wakefield.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just want to say that I think that, with all of the concerns that have been raised throughout the year around security, and we've had so many conversations as a board in numerous different ways about how to mitigate and begin to think about addressing some of our security needs. We're excited and optimistic about the addition of our new security director. And I think it would be a real mistake to saddle our new leader with a deficit of having a huge lapse in security and starting the summer potentially without any security vendor at all. I think would put our district in a really, really vulnerable position and put our leader in a position where he's having to mark his entry into the district in a really unnecessarily chaotic way.
Thank you. Any other comments? Dr. Taylor, and then Board Member Whitletter.
Yeah, I would just want to give the board information when dealing with vendors and vendors who provide personnel for us, discontinuing those contracts, even if down the line we reconnect them or we try to reactivate them. Many times those personnel, those folks who are the actual people who are assigned to us, we lose them. So that would be my only warning here, is to think long and hard around discontinuing an agreement that was already part of an RFP, over a year ago, and losing the actual folks who are in our schools every day because they're going to go look for jobs elsewhere and try to find steady employment. And so just want to give that context as we consider the vote.
Thank you. Board Member Whitletter, I saw your hand. You're good?
I'm good for right now. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, close discussion. Mr. Burnside, please call the roll on 4300K.
Board Member Wright,
No.
Board Member Whitletter,
No.
Board Member Wingfield,
Yes.
Board Member Vadlamani,
Yes.
Board Member Siders,
Yes.
Board Member Malaspina,
No.
Board President Joshua.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Let me please call the roll on 4304D.
Board President Joshua,
Yes,
Board Member Malaspina,
I don't think she can vote on this one, right?
Can't.
just abstain. Yeah, so just
sorry.
abstain.
Yeah, that's why I couldn't find D in my packet. Thank you.
Board Member Siders, sorry.
Yes.
Board Member Vadlamani,
Yes.
Board Member Wingfield,
Yes.
Board Member Whitletter,
Yes.
Board Member Wright.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We'll now move on to our second public speaks. We're now at the time for hearings of individuals and delegates known as public speaks. This is an opportunity for you to share your concerns about an item on the agenda, but not a time for dialogue with the board. The board requests that you state your name and the town of your residence for the record. We will set the time to 2 minutes for each speaker, and we ask that you respect that time limit. We must cut you off so it does not appear as if we're giving anyone an advantage to share their views over another individual. Speakers have the full protection of free speech during public speaks. However, this forum does not protect you from the subject of your free speech from pursuing libel or slander charges. And finally, the board encourages all members of our community to follow the chain of command. All right, Mr. Bonds, I'm going to go through the what I'll call the no-show list one more time. We'll start with Brandon Jones,
No.
Allison Weiss,
Not present.
Daniel Kaplan,
Not present.
Emily Konopinski,
Not present.
Julie Kelman,
Not present.
Rebecca Hollander,
Not present.
Jessica Krishnappa,
Not present.
and Leontine Harry.
Not present.
All right, that concludes our second public speaks. We're now at the time for new business. Does anyone have any new business this evening? Board Member Malaspina.
I'd like to discuss the survey that was given, the climate survey that I think Dr. Taylor said is still ongoing. The data is showing that we did not have a lot of people participate in this survey. We only had 399 students, 81 staff members, and 455 parents. I'm still waiting on to see how many people should have been, how many people this was given to, because we don't even know exactly the numbers of, what percentage of the population that is, but it's not good. And so I think I was wondering how we are going to be moving forward to get these numbers up more, because the data that we have here from the survey is not even very helpful.
Thank you for that. Oops, sorry, apologies.
And I also believe that it's very important that we get a good idea of what's going on in our schools and our climate, and that we need to, all students should be taking this so we can really get an understanding. Having 44 11th graders take it doesn't mean anything really. And, and 41 students of color that are Black took it really is not representative of our school. So I'm trying to understand how we can work as a whole, as a administration, to really make sure that this survey there are more people who take it prior to when it closes in June.
Thank you for that. I guess two things. Number one, we are not the administration. Dr. Taylor and his staff are. And then
Okay,
two, this is a question that's already been asked. So and we already understand that we are awaiting a response. So we are, Dr. Taylor's told us he'll get us one by Friday. So
I never saw
by Friday.
I don't remember asking that question.
It's in the packet of questions that was sent to Dr. Taylor regarding the suspension hearing the presentation we got this evening. Student Representative Noah Morris, and then we'll come back to Dr. Taylor.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on really quickly that if we are still missing a lack of responses after, I think you said it was Friday, I'd be willing to work on more of like a grassroots level per se, and maybe trying to work with Principal Sanchez and the Columbia Student Council to try to get more responses on that. So.
Thank you, Noah. That's very kind to you.
Thanks, Dr. Taylor.
Yeah, and so I wanted to bring to the policy chair the opportunity to invite Dr. Bernardini to talk more about the platform during our policy committee, because I think that learning more about it would help everyone's perspective. And I also agree, of course, we want as many people to participate as possible. I didn't want to give a number of expected participants off the cuff. I wanted to make sure that whatever I give you is as consistent with reality as it is. I mean, it goes to all students. We know we have a little under 2,000 kids, so that's one solid number. But it sounds like there's more detail that is sought. So I think we can grab that information pretty easily going through school messenger and all those types of things. And thank you, Noah, for that. We would love to have some support. And the survey closed last Friday, but it doesn't. I'm sorry, today's Monday. I believe last Wednesday it closed. So, but we're still learning. It's a pilot, so we want to learn how to use it to get the information that helps us improve our schools.
Thank you. Any other new business this evening? Board Member Whitletter.
So, I'm laughing because it's 11:15. I'm like, do we have it in us to talk about this right now? But it's been since April 18th that we received the full presentation from the architect about the CHS pool. And all of us have not been able to engage in a dialogue about the pool and some of the findings that we learned. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to have that conversation. Today just so happens that people came to speak publicly. Wasn't anticipating that, but I do think at this point it's, we need to sort of make a decision and sort of proceed. In my mind, that's with the long range facilities plan, having that pool space as a school commons. And some of the things that we learned in that presentation from the architect is that the pool in its current state, even if it were to be renovated, could not be used for competition. It's not possible given the length and width and depth of the pool. There's very strict standards in that regard. So this would be a pool that's for recreational use only. And some things that I've subsequently learned that a lot of maintenance happens during the summer. So schools drain their pools, and that's when, if you're taking care of the pool, that's when you get it done. So this would be a recreational use only pool that, likely you wouldn't even be able to have access to or use during the summer. And in addition to that, I also wanted to know if there's been any clarification or update as far as the survey, because to me, that's the missing link. There was a survey that went out to our students about the pool. And I would like to know if those results have been made available in the district to administration, or I don't know, Noah, if you've seen them, but I'd really like to know if this is something that our high school students weighed in on and what that result was.
Yeah, so
Oops, go ahead. No, answer the survey question and I'll answer the previous one.
Okay, yeah. No worries. So as far as I understand it, students did that as part of their journalism project for, I think it was Mr. Enyard at CHS's class. And so I think I emailed this to you. But I'm just trying to find the members of the group that actually did the survey, because I heard about it, but I'm not actually sure the members of the group who did it. So I might just go straight to the teacher and ask and see if we can get that.
Thanks. And I guess if it's part of a curriculum assignment, it's, we're really digging in the weeds as board members. So let's just work with Dr. Taylor and Ms. Sanchez to get that information if it's available. With regards to this first part about the presentation, late last week, early this week, or I guess today's Monday. So late last week and today, part of my role is planning out our future board meetings. And I asked Mr. Burnside if he would be able to get the architect to present to the full board in July at our July board meeting, since he's, the architects are the ones best equipped to answer all the questions that we have about the space, and they are available. So they will be coming to us. I think that's July 25th. So they will be presenting to the full board on July 25th and be able to answer all the questions that we have about that space. And to what Board Member Vadlamani spoke about earlier in terms of, and this was just finalized today, but to what Board Member Vadlamani talked about earlier, I do believe it's important in terms of the facility tours that the tour happens before we have that presentation. And so I'll be working, with Dr. Taylor and Mr. Burnside and Mr. Giulio to ensure that that does happen. All right. Board Member Malaspina and then Wakefield.
The timing of the presentation hold up anything on our end in terms of?
No, my understanding is that the earliest we would bid is August, hence I do not want to hold anything up, so.
Thank you.
Thanks. Board Member Wakefield.
I appreciate you guys making it work to get these tours. I think it's really hard for those of us who aren't familiar with the space to sort of even to sit into a detailed presentation and really be able to understand what's being proposed. Because I think some of the concerns around the potential plans as they're laid out now are around the feasibility and real like usability, I guess, of a space that is like common and potentially open air, and you know, whether it's being used for instructional space or whether it's being used for guidance, social work type of space. I think there's a lot of questions that I don't think I can even fully understand until I get into this space. So I appreciate that. My second question is, will the architects be able to sort of speak to the financials of some of these different possibilities? Because I think that's another question that keeps coming up is, you know, is it the same cost to remediate the pool as it is to go with the plans as is? And it would be really great to have somebody present to us who can talk in real detailed numbers.
I believe the answer is yes, but I'm going to defer to Mr. Burnside and Dr. Taylor.
Yes, they'll, and they've actually made some updates to the last presentation, so they are going to have the numbers. They're going to have the comparison of what it is to restore it versus not restore it. They'll have all the analysis. Yes.
So there was changes to the like 3.5 million for student comments versus 8 million for restoring of a recreational pool.
I'm not sure if that's what the updates were. I'm not sure. He just said they had updates to the presentation.
Because for me, like when you look at those numbers, like that's a non-starter in and of itself. I mean, can we as the district afford an $8 million renovation to a recreational use only pool? And I guess that's my question. Like, are we spending a lot of time spinning our wheels on this when we can focus on just meeting to discuss the common space and get really excited about it and make sure it's exactly what our students need and the district wants, and be prepared for fall when we're supposed to start breaking ground, hopefully, to start that construction. I just, you know, at this point, what are we waiting for? Because that's a significant amount of money.
So I think just to clarify what the presentation is on the proposed use of the space. It is not about an either or proposition. I think what we asked for that to be added, but the presentation is not, 30 slides on pool and 30 slides on commons. The presentation is about the design of the commons, and the questions that the questions that really came up was, how did the plan go from the original proposed classroom space to the newly proposed common space? That's the presentation. And then on top of that is just so you know, here is what a renovation, because there's interest in the community and from maybe some of us even here on the board, here is what a pool space, to keep it as its current, or not current use because it's not used, but to keep it as to make it a functional pool space. This is the cost that will be associated with it. So again, I just want to make sure, as Dr. Taylor will say, that everyone leaves here with the same information, that the presentation we have on July 25th will be from the architects presenting us on the commons and some of the decision making that was made to change it from a original classroom space. So those of us who had went through the long range facility plan presentations in 2017 and 2018 to the proposed use, and even 2019 to the current proposal of a student common space. Right? Board Member Malspina.
I want to make this very clear that we are not looking at changing it back to a pool. We are looking at, this presentation is about getting what the commons area is going to look like, and not about switching it back to a pool.
I mean, I can't be any clearer than what I just said, so thank you. Any other new business this evening? Dr. Taylor.
Just to close on a positive note, our intentional integration year 2 kindergarten, they have been vetted vetted over again by our team and sent to our consultant the list of those enrollees, and we expect to have assignments done before Memorial Day. Kindergarten orientations will be virtual, but the Brigance assessment that we traditionally were able to give in previous years will now be reinstituted for every school and scheduled accordingly. You know, we have some schools that have 180 kindergartners and some who have 50. So the scheduling is a little bit different, but we're super happy and excited to share that information. That'll be a part of an upcoming update as well.
Thank you. And just to, I believe you said something at the beginning of the meeting, Dr. Taylor, but that, you know, the student speakers that were scheduled and the musical selection that was scheduled, you know, we will tentatively have the essay readers at our at our June 9th meeting, since our next scheduled sort of regular meeting is June 27th, which is after the school year ends. So we do want to have them come in and read to us before the school year is over. All right, so I'll close new business and make the following motions. The Board of Education will meet in public session Monday, June 6th at 7:30 p.m. in the district meeting room, 525 Academy Street, in person, as well as using an online video conference platform to honor retirees and celebrate staff accomplishments. Action will not be taken. The Board of Education will meet in a special session Wednesday, June 9th at 6:30 p.m. in the district meeting room, 525 Academy Street, as well as using an online video conference platform to conduct the first part of the superintendent's evaluation. We will continue, that will be the meeting. Action may be taken, and immediately after public session, we will then adjourn to executive session to conduct part one of the superintendent's evaluation in 525 Academy Street in the superintendent's office, as well as using an online video conference platform. And lastly, the Board of Education will be in closed session Monday, June 27th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. at the superintendent's office, 525 Academy Street, as well as using an online video conference platform. Immediately following closed session, the board will meet in public session Monday, July 27th at 7:30 p.m. in the district meeting room, 525 Academy Street, as well as using the online video conference platform. Action will be taken. Ms. Butler,
Excuse me.
you were going to say something.
Sorry, President Joshua, you just said July 27th in that last sentence instead of June 27th.
All righty, let me back that up. The Board of Education will meet in closed session Monday, June 27th at 6:30 p.m. in the superintendent's office, 525 Academy Street in Maplewood, as well as using an online video conference platform. Immediately following closed session, the board will meet in public session at 7:30 p.m. Monday, June 27th at 7:30 p.m. in the district meeting room at 525 Academy Street in Maplewood, as well as using an online video conference platform. Action will be taken. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Board Member Siders. All in favor? That appears to be unanimous, Mr. Burnside. And I'd like to make a motion to close this meeting Monday, May 16th at 11:28 p.m. May I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Board
Second.
Member Siders. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Good night. Good night, everybody.
Stay safe.